The night is soft and heavy, the kind that wraps you in a worn quilt, urging your eyes to close. But if you're still listening, if you're one who lingers in the quiet hours, then come with me. I'll take you to a place where history hums softly, where the past hasn't settled into dust. It's a March morning in 1424 in Domremy, a village tucked along France's Meuse River. The air is crisp and a story is stirring, one so strange, so small, that if you drift off too soon you might miss it. So turn out the lights, lie down, and let me send you to dream of a girl too clean, too bold for her time. You awaken in a cottage, its walls of wattle and daub smoothed by years of passing hands. The air smells of damp wool and the faint char of last night's fire, now embers glowing faintly in the hearth. A chill seeps through the straw beneath you, pricking your skin like tiny needles. Your breath catches as you rise, bare feet brushing the cold earth floor, each step a soft crunch against the packed dirt. Outside, a rooster crows its call, muffled by a thick mist that clings to the village like a reluctant lover. You pull a coarse blanket tighter, its weave rough against your shoulders, and move toward the door. It groans as you push it open, revealing Domremy's cluster of homes, their thatched roofs glistening with dew. The mist swirls, parting to show a figure in the distance, a girl no older than 13, her hair loose and catching the faint dawn light like a halo. This is Joan, though you don't know her name yet. She's kneeling in the grass, lips moving silently, eyes fixed on something unseen. You step closer, the wet grass slick underfoot, carrying the scent of lavender crushed beneath her knees. Her dress, simple homespun, is oddly clean for a peasant girl, its edges free of the mud that clings to everything here. She's whispering, her voice a soft cadence like a lullaby sung to no one. "They come again," she says, and you strain to hear, wondering who they are. The air feels charged, as if the mist holds its breath. A bell tolls from the village church, off-key and hesitant, as if the monk ringing it forgot which day it was. You smile, imagine a monk half asleep fumbling the calendar and waking the village in the wrong saint's day. Joan rises, brushing her hands on her skirt, and you notice her fingers tremble slightly. Her face is plain cheeks flushed from the cold, yet there's a fire in her eyes that makes you pause. Historians centuries later will argue over this moment. Were her visions real, sent by God as she claimed, or were they the fevered dreams of a girl stretched thin by hunger and war? Some say she saw saints, Michael, Catherine, Margaret, speaking in light and shadow. Others point to epilepsy or a mind unmoored by the 100 Years' War's shadow. The debate lingers unresolved like the mist that refuses to lift. You follow her toward the cottage, her steps light but purposeful. A neighbor, an old woman with a face like crumpled parchment, watches from her doorway. "Too clean, that one," she mutters, her voice a mix of suspicion and awe. Washes her hands like a lady, but her father's just a farmer. You chuckle, imagine being notorious in a village for bathing too often. The old woman tosses a pebble into the mud, sending ripples through a puddle that catch the light like tiny mirrors. You linger, noticing how the mist softens the village's edges, making the world feel small, intimate, as if Domremy exists only for this moment. The village stirs now. A dog barks sharp and insistent, and the scent of baking bread drifts from a nearby oven, warm and yeasty. You pause near Joan's cottage, watching her slip inside. Her father, a broad man with hands rough as tree bark, mends a plow by the door. He glances at Joan, brow furrowing. Out praying again, he grumbles, but there's no real heat in his voice. You wonder what he thinks of his daughter's odd habits, her visions, her cleanliness, her quiet intensity. Did he sense she was destined for something greater, or did he see only a girl who forgot to milk the goats? A soft laugh spills from the cottage, Joan's younger brother teasing her. "Did your saints tell you to scrub the pots twice today?" he quips, dodging a playful swat. You grin, imagining Joan years later facing kings with that same quick temper. The moment feels human, fleeting, like the mist burning away as the sun climbs. The historical record tells us Joan was born around 1412 here in Domremy to a family of modest means. The village was loyal to the French crown, caught in the 100 Years' War's churn with English and Burgundian forces pressing close. Yet Joan at this moment is just a girl with a secret she barely understands. Historians note her early devotion, her hours in the village church, but they puzzle over why her visions began now in 1424. Was it the war's shadow or something stranger unrecorded? You step closer to the cottage, the air growing warmer as the mist thins. A hen clucks nearby, scratching at the earth, and you notice a small wooden cross hanging above the door, swaying slightly in the breeze. Joan's mother appears, her apron dusted with flour, her eyes kind but tired. "Joan, come help with the bread," she calls, her voice soft yet firm. Joan nods, but her gaze lingers on the horizon as if she sees something beyond the village's edge. You wonder if she already hears the call to leave, to step into a world that will both exalt and destroy her. Historians debate her family's status. Were they simple peasants, or did they hold some local influence? Some records suggest her father Jacques had minor roles in village affairs, hinting at a standing above the poorest farmers. Others argue they were unremarkable, making Joan's rise even stranger. The ambiguity fascinates, like the faint outline of hills through the mist. You notice a neighbor's child staring at Joan, clutching a rag doll, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Does she really see angels?" the child whispers to her mother, who hushes her quickly. You smile again. Imagine a village where a girl's visions spark more gossip than a bad harvest. The sun breaks through, casting long shadows across the muddy path. You feel the mist's dampness on your skin, the faint ache in your legs from standing too long. Joan disappears inside, and the cottage door creaks shut, leaving you in the quiet. The village hums with small sounds, clinking buckets, a distant hammer, the monk's bell still ringing faintly as if he's given up on the right day entirely. You want to stay to see what Joan does next, but the colors soften the world, fading into a dreamlike haze. Remember that monk with the wrong calendar. His off-key bell will call you back, pulling you deeper into Joan's story. For now, let the mist carry you forward to another morning, another piece of her strange, fleeting life. You linger in the village square, the mist now a faint veil as the sun climbs higher. The air carries a new warmth, mingling with the earthy scent of mud and the sharp tang of wood smoke from nearby chimneys. Your boots sink slightly into the soft ground, each step a reminder of Domremy's humble pulse. The village feels alive yet fragile, caught in a war that creeps ever closer. You notice a group of men by the church, their voices low, discussing rumors of English raiders nearby. Their cloaks are patched, their faces weathered, and one of them spits into the dirt, muttering about taxes to a king who seems too far away to care. You wonder if Joan hears these whispers, if they fuel the fire in her eyes. You turn back toward her cottage, drawn by the sound of her voice, now raised in a soft argument with her brother. "They're not just dreams," she says, her tone sharp but earnest. "They're real, Pierre, as real as this house." Her brother laughs, but it's gentler now, as if he's used to her strangeness. You smile again. Imagine a family where visions are just another sibling squabble, like who forgot to feed the chickens. The historical record is thin here, but we know Joan spoke of her voices to her family, though they didn't understand. Some historians argue her parents dismissed her claims as childish fancy. Others suggest they feared she was touched by something dangerous, perhaps even unholy. You step closer, peering through the cottage's open door. The interior is dim lit only by the hearth and a single rushlight flickering on a wooden table. Joan kneels by the fire, stirring a pot of porridge, her movements precise despite the distraction of her brother's teasing. Her mother watches silently, her hands kneading dough, the rhythm steady as a heartbeat. The scent of oats and wood smoke fills the air, grounding you in this moment. You notice a small wooden statue of St. Catherine on a shelf, its paint chipped but its eyes bright as if watching Joan back. Did Joan carve it herself, you wonder, or was it a gift from the church where she spent so many hours? The village outside hums with activity now. A cart rumbles past, its wheels creaking under a load of firewood, and you hear a woman scolding a child for splashing in a puddle. The normalcy of it all feels at odds with Joan's quiet intensity, as if she's already half in another world. Historians puzzle over her cleanliness, that odd detail that set her apart. In a time when bathing was rare, especially for peasants, Joan's habit of washing her hands and face daily was almost scandalous. Some argue it was a sign of her piety, a ritual tied to her visions. Others see it as a quirk, perhaps a way to assert control in a chaotic world. The debate is a small one, but it lingers like the faint lavender scent still clinging to her skirt. You move to the edge of the square where a small stream trickles past, its water catching the sunlight in fleeting glints. You kneel, feeling the cool earth against your palms, and watch as Joan emerges from the cottage carrying a basket of laundry. She heads toward the stream, her steps quick as if drawn by some unseen urgency. You follow, noticing how the other villagers glance at her, some with curiosity, others with unease. A boy no older than 10 tosses a clod of dirt at her basket, giggling as it misses. "Clean Joan," he calls, scampering off before she can respond. You laugh softly, imagine a nickname born from soap and water becoming a village legend. Joan kneels by the stream, dipping a cloth into the water, her movements deliberate. The current gurgles softly, a soothing counterpoint to the village's noise. You sit nearby, feeling the damp grass against your legs, and watch as she scrubs the cloth with a focus that feels almost sacred. The historical record notes that Joan's visions grew stronger in these years, urging her toward a mission she couldn't yet name. Some scholars argue the war's violence, raids, famine, fear pushed her toward a divine calling. Others wonder if her visions were a way to escape a life of labor and an arranged marriage. The truth, like the stream's reflection, shifts and eludes. The sun is high now, the mist gone, leaving Domremy bathed in golden light. You feel a warmth on your face, the air alive with the buzz of bees and the distant lowing of cattle. Joan finishes her task, setting the basket aside, and gazes across the stream toward the hills. Her expression is unreadable, but you sense a weight in it, as if she's carrying a secret too heavy for her slight frame. You want to ask her what she sees, what she hears, but the moment feels too fragile, like a dream about to fade. The monk's bell rings again, still off-key, pulling you back to the village's rhythm. Remember that monk, his clumsy tolling will follow you, a thread tying you to Joan's world. For now, let the stream's soft murmur carry you forward toward the next chapter of her strange, blazing life. Asterisk, asterisk, Part 2. The Girl Who Saw Saints, asterisk, asterisk. You're still here, aren't you? The night is deep now, its silence wrapping you like a soft shawl, coaxing you toward sleep. But if your eyes are still open, if you're still caught in the quiet pull of history, then let me take you back to Domremy, to a summer evening in 1425. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of hay, and a girl named Joan is about to step into a moment that will change everything. Lie back, let the world fade, and come with me to a meadow where the light bends strangely, where a peasant girl speaks to shadows no one else can see. Don't drift off yet, this story is too delicate, too luminous to miss. You find yourself standing at the edge of a meadow just outside Domremi's cluster of cottages. The sun is sinking, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, and the grass under your feet is soft, still warm from the day's heat. The air carries the sweet, earthy smell of cut hay, mingled with the faint tang of river water from the nearby mews. Crickets hum their song, a steady pulse, and somewhere a cow lows its call, drifting like a memory. You feel the weight of the day settling into your bones, a gentle ache that makes you want to sit to rest. But something draws you forward, a flicker of movement near a gnarled oak at the meadow's heart. There she is, Joan, kneeling again, her homespun dress catching the last light. Her hair, loose and slightly tangled, glows like burnished copper, and her hands are clasped tightly as if anchoring herself to the earth. You step closer, the grass brushing your ankles, and hear her voice low and fervent. "Saint Michael, guide me," she whispers, her words barely audible over the crickets. "Catherine Margaret, tell me what I must do." You pause, heart quickening, as a strange light seems to shimmer around her, not quite a glow, but a trick of the dusk that makes the air feel alive. You blink, wondering if it's just the sunset or something more. A twig snaps under your foot, and Joan's head turns slightly, though she doesn't see you. Her face is plain but fierce, her eyes wide as if staring into a world beyond the meadow. You notice her hands again clean, despite the day's work, the nails scrubbed free of dirt. It's an odd detail, one that makes you smile. Imagine a village gossiping about a girl who washes too much, as if cleanliness were a crime. Historians centuries later will pore over this moment, debating what Joan saw. Was it divine visitation, as she swore, with saints appearing in radiant light? Or was it a hallucination born of a mind strained by war's fear or a body weakened by fasting? Some scholars point to medieval mysticism, others to medical causes, migraines perhaps, or temporal lobe seizures. The mystery lingers as elusive as the light around her now. You settle onto the grass, feeling its coolness through your clothes, and watch as Joan rises, her movements slow but certain. She brushes her skirt, scattering bits of clover, and walks toward a small stone cross at the meadow's edge, half hidden by wildflowers. The cross is weathered, its edges softened by years of rain, and you wonder if Joan placed it there herself. The historical record tells us she often prayed at a local shrine, the fairy tree nearby, where villagers whispered of old magic. Some historians argue this tree, tied to pagan lore, shaped her visions, blending folk belief with her faith. Others insist her saints were purely Christian, untouched by superstition. You smile at the thought, imagine scholars bickering over a tree while Joan saw angels. A soft laugh breaks your reverie. A shepherd boy leaning on a crooked staff watches Joan from a distance. Talking to her saints again, he calls to a friend, his voice teasing but not unkind. "Maybe they'll tell her where my lost sheep went." His friend snickers, and you chuckle too. Imagine a saint pausing mid-vision to point out a stray lamb. The boys wander off, their laughter fading, leaving you alone with Joan in the fading light. The meadow feels quieter now, the crickets softening as if respecting her solitude. You notice a faint breeze carrying the scent of wild mint, and it stirs the hem of Joan's dress, making it flutter like a banner. You move closer to the cross, where Joan kneels again, her lips moving silently. The stone is cool under your hand, its surface rough with lichen, and you feel a pang of something: curiosity, awe, perhaps pity. Joan's devotion is palpable, but so is her isolation. The village accepts her, yet keeps her at arm's length, wary of her strangeness. You think of the old woman from that misty morning muttering about Joan's cleanliness. Remember her pebble rippling the puddle. It feels like a lifetime ago, though only a year has passed. The war presses closer now. English raids have burned nearby villages, and Domremy's loyalty to the French crown feels like a fragile shield. Historians note that 1425 was a turning point for Joan when her visions grew urgent, commanding her to act. But what did they say exactly? The records are vague, her own words filtered through later trials. A dog barks in the distance, sharp and sudden, pulling you back to the meadow. Joan stands, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sky has deepened to indigo. You notice a small tear in her sleeve, hastily mended, and it strikes you as oddly human, a girl with visions of glory, yet still bound to chores and threadbare clothes. You wonder what her family thinks now as her prayers grow longer, her words stranger. Her father Jacques once grumbled about her dawn wanderings. Does he sense the weight of her destiny? A neighbor passes carrying a basket of apples, their scent tart and sweet. "Joan, your mother's calling," she says, her tone brisk. Joan nods but doesn't move, as if rooted to the spot. You sit back, the grass damp now as night falls, and feel the meadow's stillness settle over you. The historical record is thin on these early years, but we know Joan's visions intensified, urging her toward a mission to save France to crown a king. Some historians argue her faith was shaped by Domremy's priest who preached of a prophesied maiden. Others see her as a product of desperation, a girl who gave voice to a nation's hope. The debate is a quiet one, like the meadow's hush, but it underscores her mystery. You notice a star emerging above its light, faint but steady, and it feels like a sign, though, of what you're not sure. Joan turns back toward the village, her basket forgotten by the cross. You follow, keeping your distance as the path crunches under her feet. A lantern glows in a nearby cottage, casting shadows that dance like spirits. You smile at the thought maybe Joan's saints look like that, flickering and elusive. The village is quiet now, save for the soft clink of a blacksmith's hammer working late. You pass the church, its bell silent tonight, and you grin, remembering that monk with the wrong calendar. His off-key tolling feels like a friend now, a thread tying you to Joan's world. As she disappears into her cottage, the door creaking shut, the meadow fades its colors, softening into a dream. Let the starlight carry you forward to another moment, another piece of Joan's strange, radiant story. You linger in the meadow a moment longer, the air cooling as the last traces of daylight vanish. The scent of mint lingers, mixing with the faint musk of earth and the distant smoke of village hearths. Your fingers brush the stone, cross its surface, gritty with age, and you feel a quiet pull, as if the meadow itself holds Joan's secret. You glance back toward Domremy, where lanterns now dot the village like fireflies, their glow soft against the deepening night. The cricket's song has slowed, a gentle rhythm that soothes your thoughts, urging you to follow Joan's path back to the village. As you walk, the dirt path feels firm underfoot, worn smooth by generations of feet. You pass a small orchard, its apple trees heavy with fruit, and the sweet overripe scent makes your mouth water. A bat flits overhead, its wings a soft whisper, and you smile. Imagine Joan glancing up, mistaking it for one of her saints in the dark. The thought is absurd, but it fits her world where the line between vision and reality blurs. You reach the village square where a few men still linger, their voices hushed as they speak of war. One mentions Orleans, a city under siege, and you catch the fear in his tone, sharp as the crack of a breaking branch. Joan must hear these stories too. You think her visions growing sharper with each tale of loss. You pause near her cottage, its walls glowing faintly from the hearth inside. Through a crack in the door, you see Joan sitting by the fire, her hands folded, her gaze distant. Her mother Isabel kneads dough at a table, the rhythmic thump a counterpoint to the fire's crackle. "You're late again," Isabel says, her voice gentle but firm. "The laundry's not done and the goats need tending." Joan nods, but her eyes don't move, as if she's listening to something else, something beyond the cottage's walls. You wonder if her saints are speaking now, their voices weaving through the fire's hiss. Historians debate this intensity. Was it faith madness or a desperate need to act? Some argue her visions were a response to trauma, the war's shadow seeping into her dreams. Others see a calculated mind using divine claims to gain authority in a world that denied it to women. The truth, like the firelight, flickers and escapes. A sudden clatter breaks the quiet, a clay bowl slipping from Isabel's hands, rolling across the floor. Joan startles, then laughs, a sound so bright it feels out of place. "Maybe the saints want porridge too," she teases, picking up the bowl. Her mother shakes her head, smiling despite herself, and you grin. Imagine a saint with an appetite for peasant cooking. The moment is small, human, grounding Joan in the everyday before her path turns toward the impossible. You notice a small cross woven from straw on the wall, its edges frayed, and it reminds you of the stone cross in the meadow, tying this moment to the last. Outside, the village settles into night. A dog's bark fades, replaced by the soft hoot of an owl, and the air grows cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth. You step back, feeling the path's grit under your boots, and look toward the church, its silhouette stark against the starry sky. The bell is silent, but you think of that monk again, his clumsy tolling, a quiet joke that follows you. Historians note that Joan's visions grew specific in 1425, urging her to seek the Dauphin to lift the siege of Orléans. But why her? Why now? Some argue her rural upbringing gave her a fierce independence. Others see her as a vessel for a nation's hope, chosen by chance or fate. The debate hums like the crickets you still hear faintly. Joan rises, moving to a small window, her silhouette framed by the fire's glow. She looks out toward the hills as if her saints are waiting there. You feel a pang of something, admiration perhaps, or sorrow for what's to come. The night is deep now, the village a patchwork of shadows and light. You want to stay to hear what Joan says next, but the world softens, the stars blurring into a dreamlike haze. Let the owl's call carry you forward to another day, another step in Joan's blazing, impossible journey. You're still with me, aren't you? The night is deep now, its quiet folding around you like a heavy cloak whispering of sleep. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the gentle pull of history's untold moments, then let me guide you back to Domremy, to a crisp autumn morning in 1426. The air is sharp-scented with fallen leaves, and a village is stirring with whispers about a girl named Joan, whose strangeness grows harder to ignore. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a muddy square where gossip hums and a girl's clean hands spark more questions than answers. Don't drift off yet, this story is too vivid, too human to fade. You stand in Domremy's village square, the ground soft and slick beneath your boots, churned by carts and the shuffle of feet. The air smells of wet earth and the faint sweetness of apples rotting in nearby orchards, their branches bare against a pale sky. A chill bites your cheeks and you pull your cloak tighter, its wool scratching your neck. The square is alive with small sounds, the creak of a cart's wheel, the cluck of hens scratching near a low stone wall, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Above it all, the church bell tolls still off-key, and you smile, remember that monk with the wrong calendar. He's at it again, ringing in the day as if he's lost track of time itself. In the center of the square, a crowd gathers their voices, a low murmur like bees in a hive. You step closer, feeling the mud suck at your boots, and catch sight of Joan, now 14, standing near a well. Her dress is plain but spotless, its hem untouched by the grime that clings to everyone else. She's drawing water, the bucket's rope creaking as she pulls her movement steady despite the eyes on her. The villagers watch, some openly, others from the corners of their eyes. Too clean, an old man mutters, leaning on a stick, his breath fogging in the cool air. No peasant girl should look like that. You chuckle softly. Imagine being infamous for a scrubbed face in a village where dirt is a badge of honest work. Joan ignores the stares, but you notice her shoulders stiffen as if she feels their weight. A woman nearby, her apron stained with flour, whispers to a friend. She says her saints talk to her now every day. Her friend snorts, saints or spirits who can tell my cow's got more sense than to listen to voices. You grin, imagine a cow rolling its eyes at Joan's visions, chewing cud with divine skepticism. The historical record confirms Joan's visions grew more frequent by 1426, urging her toward a mission to save France. But historians debate her place in Domrémy's social fabric. Was her family merely peasant, or did they hold some local sway? Some records suggest her father Jacques served as a village official, hinting at modest influence. Others argue they were unremarkable, making Joan's boldness even stranger. The ambiguity lingers like the fog that still clings to the square's edges. You move closer to the well, the air damp with the scent of moss on its stones. Joan's hands gripping the rope are pink from the cold, but clean, her nails free of the grime you see on others. It's an odd detail, one that fascinates you. Historians puzzle over this too. Was her cleanliness a sign of piety, a ritual tied to her visions? Or was it defiance, a way to stand apart in a world that expected her to blend in? Some argue it was practical. She needed to appear pure to convince others of her divine calling. Others see it as a quirk, perhaps a compulsion born of a mind that saw too much. You watch her haul the bucket up, water sloshing over the edge, catching the light like liquid silver. The sight is ordinary, yet it feels heavy, as if each drop carries the weight of her destiny. A boy runs past, kicking a pebble that skitters across the square, and shouts, "Joan, did your saints tell you where the rain's hiding?" The crowd laughs, but Joan only smiles, a quick flash that softens her face. "Maybe they're saving it for your muddy boots," she calls back, and you laugh. Imagine a saint scheduling rain to ruin a boy's day. The moment breaks the tension, and the crowd thins, villagers drifting to their tasks. You linger, noticing a small wooden cross around Joan's neck, swaying as she moves. It reminds you of the stone cross in the meadow, tying this moment to the last, to the girl who knelt under an oak, speaking to shadows. The square grows quieter, the sun climbing higher, burning away the fog. You feel the warmth on your face, the air now sharp with the scent of wood smoke from a nearby chimney. A cart rumbles past its driver, cursing as a wheel sticks in the mud, and you hear the faint bleat of goats from a nearby field. Joan sets the bucket down, wiping her hands on her skirt, and you notice a faint tremble in her fingers. Is it the cold or something else? The historical record tells us 1426 was a year of growing urgency for Joan. Her voice is now commanding her to leave Domrémy to seek the Dauphin. But how did a peasant girl know where to go? Historians debate this. Some say local priests guided her, whispering of prophecies about a maiden savior. Others argue her knowledge came from travelers' tales carried on the wind, like the smoke now curling skyward. You step back, leaning against the well's stone edge, its roughness grounding you. A woman approaches Joan, her face lined with worry. "Your father's looking for you," she says, her voice low. "He's heard the talk says you're spending too much time at the church." Joan nods, but her eyes are distant, as if she's already halfway to another world. You wonder what Jacques thinks now as his daughter's strangeness grows. Does he fear for her or for the family's name? A sudden gust carries the scent of burning leaves, sharp and nostalgic, and you notice a small fire in the square's corner, tended by a boy who pokes it with a stick. The flames crackle, a soft counterpoint to the village's hum. You watch Joan lift the bucket water sloshing softly and head toward her cottage. The square feels emptier now, the villagers' voices fading as they scatter. You notice a small girl staring at Joan, clutching a rag doll, her eyes wide. Does she really see angels? She whispers to her mother, who hushes her with a quick shake of her head. You smile, imagine a child's doll listening to Joan's saints, nodding along in silent awe. The moment feels fragile, like the last leaves clinging to the trees. Historians note that Domremy was a village divided, loyal to the French crown, but surrounded by Burgundian lands. Joan's visions, some argue, were a spark in this tinderbox, igniting a hope no one else dared voice. Others see her as an anomaly, a girl who outgrew her world too fast. The sun is high now, the square bathed in light, though shadows linger under the eaves of cottages. You feel the mud drying on your boots, the air warming with the day's work. Joan disappears into her cottage, the door creaking shut, and you hear her mother's voice, sharp but kind, calling her to chores. The church bell rings again, still off-key, and you grin that Monk, bless him, is a constant in this shifting world. Remember his clumsy tolling. It's a thread pulling you back, tying you to Joan's story. The square fades its colors, softening into a dreamlike haze. Let the scent of burning leaves carry you forward to another day, another step in Joan's strange blazing path. You linger in the square a moment longer, the scent of burning leaves curling around you, mingling with the faint sweetness of apples and the damp musk of earth. The sun climbs higher, its light cutting through the last wisps of fog, casting long shadows across the muddy ground. Your cloak feels heavy now, the wool warm against your skin, and you shift your weight, feeling the ground's softness yield beneath you. The village hums with life, women carrying baskets, men hauling wood, children darting through the crowd, their laughter sharp and fleeting. You notice a small bird, a sparrow, hopping near the well, pecking at crumbs left by some careless baker. Its tiny movements feel like a quiet defiance against the square's bustle. You turn your gaze back to Joan's cottage, where the door remains closed, but a faint clatter escapes, a wooden spoon against a pot perhaps, or the scrape of a bench. You imagine Joan inside, helping her mother, her mind half elsewhere, caught in the voices only she hears. The historical record tells us that by 1426 Joan's visions were no longer private musings, but a call to action urging her to leave Domremy for Vaucouleurs, to seek a captain who could lead her to the Dauphin. But how did she know such a path existed? Historians argue over this. Some say she overheard soldiers' tales carried by travelers passing through the village. Others believe a local priest steeped in prophecies planted the idea of a maiden savior. The debate is a quiet storm, like the wind now stirring the square, rustling leaves across the mud. A sudden shout pulls you back. A man, his face red from exertion, wrestles with a cart stuck in a rut, its wheel groaning like a wounded animal. "Curse this mud," he bellows, and a passing woman laughs. "Curse your aim, Pierre. You've hit every rut from here to Rheims." You chuckle, imagine a cart with a personal grudge against its driver, seeking out every puddle. The crowd parts for the cart, and you catch another glimpse of Joan emerging from the cottage with a basket of bread. Her face is calm, but her eyes are bright, as if lit by an inner fire. She moves through the square, ignoring the whispers, her steps sure despite the mud. You follow, drawn by her quiet intensity, and notice a small crowd trailing her, not too close, but close enough to watch. A woman with a basket of eggs nudges her neighbor. She's off to the church again, she says, her voice low, prays more than the priest himself. Her neighbor snorts. Maybe she's praying for a husband to tame her. You grin, imagine Joan, who dreams of battle, sitting meekly at a loom for some village boy. The humor fades as you see Joan pause, her gaze flicking toward the church, its stone walls dark against the morning light. The cross around her neck glints, a call back to the meadow stone cross, tying her to that evening under the oak. The square grows busier, the air thick with the scent of fresh bread and the sharp tang of a nearby forge. You feel the warmth of the sun now, its light glinting off the well's water still rippling from Joan's bucket. A child runs past, nearly knocking over a stack of firewood, and his mother scolds him, her voice sharp but warm. You notice Joan stop by the church door, her hand resting on its weathered wood as if seeking permission to enter. The historical record notes that Domremy's church was a refuge for Joan, where she prayed for hours, sometimes neglecting her chores. Some historians argue this devotion shaped her mission, rooting her visions in faith. Others wonder if the church was an escape, a place to dream beyond the village's confines. The truth, like the light through the church's narrow windows, is fractured and unclear. You step closer, the ground firmer near the church, and feel a faint vibration from the bell tower above. That monk still ringing off key is a constant, his clumsy tolling a quiet joke that follows you. You smile, remembering his fumbled calendar, and wonder if he knows the girl he sees in church is about to change the world. Joan slips inside the door, creaking shut, and you're left in the square, the village's pulse slowing as the morning settles. A breeze carries the scent of apples again, and you notice a small girl, the same one with the rag doll, watching the church door. Will she fight the English, she whispers to no one, her voice so soft it's almost lost. You smile. Imagine a doll dreaming of battles, clutching a tiny sword. The square fades, its sounds softening, the cart's creak, the hens cluck, the monk's bell blending into a dreamlike hum. You feel the sun's warmth linger, the mud's grit on your boots as Joan's world slips away. Let the scent of apples and smoke carry you forward to another moment, another step in her strange, blazing journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night wraps around you now, its quiet as soft as a whispered secret nudging you toward sleep. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the gentle tide of history's forgotten moments, then let me take you to Vaucouleurs, a fortified town north of Domremy in the winter of 1428. The air is sharp with frost, and a girl named Joan is about to step into a world that doesn't know what to make of her. Lie back, let the darkness blur, and come with me to a smoky tavern where a peasant girl dares to speak of war and kings. Don't drift off yet, this story is too bold, too strange to fade into the night. You find yourself standing outside a tavern in Vaucouleurs, the cold biting your fingertips through your thin gloves. The building's walls are weathered stone, its roof sagging under a dusting of snow, and the air smells of wood smoke and stale ale, with a faint whiff of roasted mutton drifting from within. Your boots crunch on the frozen ground, each step echoing faintly in the narrow street. Lanterns hang above the tavern door, their light flickering like uncertain stars, casting shadows that dance across the frost-glazed cobbles. Inside, voices rumble, a mix of laughter and argument, punctuated by the clink of mugs and the crackle of a fire. You push open the heavy door, its hinges groaning, and step into a haze of warmth and smoke. The tavern is crowded, men in rough wool cloaks hunched over tables, their faces ruddy from drink and cold. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of spilled ale and the greasy tang of tallow candles. You weave through the crowd, feeling the sticky floorboards underfoot, and spot her Joan, now 16, standing near a corner table. Her dress is still plain, still impossibly clean, though a faint smudge of road dust marks her hem proof of her journey from Domremy. She's speaking to a man broad-shouldered and grizzled, his armor dented from battles you can only imagine. This is Robert de Baudricourt, captain of Vaucouleurs, and Joan's voice, clear and unyielding, cuts through the tavern's din. "My voices tell me I must see the Dauphin," she says, her hands clasped tightly as if holding her courage in place. "France needs me, and I will not fail." Baudricourt leans back, his chair creaking, and laughs a deep, skeptical sound that makes the men nearby smirk. "A peasant girl leading armies," he says, wiping ale from his beard. "Go home, child, and tend your goats." You smile, imagine a saint whispering battle plans to a girl who's never held a sword, only to be dismissed for herding livestock. Joan's face doesn't falter, though. Her eyes burn with a fire that makes the candlelight seem dim. You settle onto a bench nearby, the wood rough under your hands, and feel the warmth of the fire against your face. The tavern's noise ebbs and flows, but Joan's presence draws your focus like a single clear note in a storm. Historians puzzle over this moment. Why did Baudricourt, a seasoned captain, eventually listen to a peasant girl? Some argue he was swayed by her unshakable conviction, a charisma that bordered on the divine. Others suggest political pressure, rumors of a prophesied maiden savior perhaps, or desperation for any spark of hope in a war-torn land. The records are unclear, with gaps that frustrate scholars like a page torn from a book. You notice a small cross at Joan's throat, glinting faintly, a callback to the stone cross in the meadow, tying her to that girl who knelt under an oak. A serving woman brushes past her tray, sloshing with mugs, and mutters, "She's either mad or blessed, that one." You grin. Imagine a tavern betting pool on whether Joan's saints are real or just too much cider. The woman spills a drop of ale on your sleeve, its sour scent sharp, and you wipe it away, feeling the damp wool cling to your skin. Joan speaks again, her voice steady despite Baudricourt's scoffing. "God has sent me," she says, "and you will see his will." The captain waves her off, but you catch a flicker of doubt in his eyes, as if her words have snagged something deep within him. The tavern grows louder, a drunken song rising from a far table, its tune off-key like that monk's bell in Domremy. You smile, remembering his clumsy tolling, a thread weaving through Joan's story. The historical record tells us Joan came to Vaucouleurs in early 1428, seeking an escort to the Dauphin at Chinon. She was turned away at first, but her persistence wore down Baudricourt's resistance. Some historians argue her cleanliness and composure, unusual for a peasant, lent her an air of authority. Others wonder if local supporters, perhaps minor nobles, vouched for her, their names lost to time. The debate hums like the tavern's noise, a puzzle with no clear answer. You lean closer, the bench creaking under you, and notice a small detail. Joan's hands, still clean despite the dusty road, are clenched so tightly her knuckles are white. She's nervous, you realize, but her voice betrays none of it. A man nearby, his cloak patched and smelling of horse sweat, leans toward his friend. "She's got no business here," he mutters. "What's next, my mule leading the charge?" You chuckle, imagine a mule in armor trotting proudly beside Joan's banner. The friend laughs, but his eyes linger on Joan, curious despite himself. The fire crackles, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney, and you feel the tavern's warmth seeping into your bones. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the shutters, and you catch the faint scent of snow through a crack in the wall. Joan steps back from Baudricourt's table, her face calm but resolute. "I'll return," she says, her voice carrying a quiet promise. The captain snorts but doesn't answer, turning back to his ale. You wonder what he sees in her, a mad girl, a visionary, or something he can't yet name. The historical record notes that Joan's persistence paid off. By February 1429, Baudricourt gave her an escort, perhaps swayed by her faith or by whispers of prophecy. But why her? Why now? The question lingers like the smoke curling above the fire. You rise, feeling the floor's stickiness tug at your boots, and follow Joan as she steps outside. The cold hits you like a slap, the air sharp with frost, and the faint tang of pine from distant woods. Joan pulls her cloak tighter, its edges frayed but clean, and walks toward a small chapel across the street, its stone walls glowing faintly in the lantern light. You pause, noticing a stray dog sniffing at a pile of snow, its tail wagging as if it's found a treasure. You smile, maybe it's dreaming of leading armies, too. Joan kneels at the chapel door, her breath fogging, and you hear her whisper a prayer, the words too soft to catch. The street is quiet now, save for the crunch of snow underfoot and the distant clatter of the tavern. You feel the cold seeping through your cloak, the weight of Joan's courage settling over you. Historians debate her motives. Was she driven by divine certainty, or was she a pawn in a larger game pushed by those who saw her as a symbol? The truth, like the snowflakes now falling, is fleeting, impossible to hold. You watch Joan rise, her silhouette stark against the chapel's glow, and feel the world shift, the tavern's warmth fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her story. Let the snow's soft fall carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's blazing, impossible journey. You linger in the street outside the chapel, the snow falling thicker now, each flake catching the lantern light like tiny sparks. The air is sharp, stinging your nose, and the scent of pine grows stronger, mingling with the faint smoke still drifting from the tavern. Your boots sink into the fresh snow, leaving shallow prints that vanish almost as soon as they form. The chapel's stone walls loom before you, their surface slick with frost, and you feel a quiet reverence settle over you, as if the very stones hold Joan's prayers. She's still kneeling at the door, her cloak dusted with snow, her head bowed in a silence that feels heavier than the night itself. You step closer, the crunch of snow underfoot blending with the distant hum of the tavern, now muffled by the falling flakes. Joan's breath clouds the air, and you notice her hands clasped tightly, still clean despite the journey from Domremy. It's a small thing, but it strikes you again, her insistence on cleanliness, even here in a town that reeks of war and weariness. Historians linger on this detail, some calling it a mark of her piety, a ritual to mirror the purity of her mission. Others see it as a calculated act, a way to stand out in a world that expected peasants to be caked in dirt. The debate is a quiet one, but it fascinates, like the way the snow clings to Joan's cloak, refusing to melt. A sudden noise breaks the stillness, a creak from the chapel door as a priest emerges, his robes brushing the ground, his face shadowed under a hood. "Child, it's late," he says, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Your prayers can wait till morning." Joan looks up, her eyes bright despite the cold. "My voices don't wait," she replies, her tone firm but respectful. The priest hesitates, then shakes his head, muttering something about stubborn girls. You smile. Imagine a saint scolding Joan for praying too much, as if heaven has office hours. The priest retreats, the door creaking shut, leaving you and Joan in the snow's quiet embrace. The historical record tells us that Joan's visits to Vaucouleurs were persistent, spanning months as she pressed Baudricourt for aid. By early 1429, he relented, providing her with an escort to Chinon, a decision that puzzles scholars. Some argue he was swayed by her charisma, a force that could quiet a tavern or sway a captain. Others point to external pressures, perhaps local nobles aware of prophecies about a maiden from Lorraine pushed him to act. The records are spotty, with letters and testimonies lost or altered, leaving gaps that frustrate historians. You feel the weight of this mystery like the snow piling softly on your shoulders, obscuring the path behind you. You move closer to Joan, the chapel's lantern casting a warm glow across her face. Her cross, that small wooden pendant, catches the light, a callback to the meadow's stone cross and the straw cross in her cottage. It's a thread weaving her story together, grounding her in this moment of defiance. A gust of wind carries a faint shout from the tavern where someone is singing off-key, and you grin, thinking of that monk's bell in Domremy still ringing out of tune. The song fades, replaced by the soft patter of snow, and you notice a small bird perched on the chapel's eaves, its feathers fluffed against the cold. It chirps once, a tiny sound, and you chuckle. Maybe it's cheering Joan on, a feathered herald for a girl with no army. Joan rises, brushing snow from her cloak, and turns toward the street, her steps deliberate despite the cold. You follow, feeling the snow's chill seep through your boots, the air sharp with the scent of frost and distant fires. The tavern's noise grows faint, but you catch a glimpse of Baudricourt through a window, his face lit by candlelight, deep in thought. Does he sense the shift Joan brings, the spark of something greater? You wonder what it's like to face her, to hear her speak of saints and kings with a peasant's accent. The historical record notes that Joan's confidence grew in Vaucouleurs. Her voice is now clear: go to Chinon, crown the Dauphin, save France. But how did she, a girl with no education, know the Dauphin's court existed? Some historians credit local gossip, others divine inspiration. The truth, like the snow now swirling, is impossible to grasp. You pause at the street's edge, watching Joan disappear into the night, her silhouette fading into the falling snow. The chapel's lantern flickers, casting long shadows that twist like spirits. You feel the cold bite deeper, the weight of history pressing against you. A stray dog, the same one from earlier, trots past, its nose low, sniffing for scraps. You smile, imagine it dreaming of glory, trailing Joan to battle with a wagging tail. The street grows quiet, the snow muffling all but your own breath, and the world softens, its edges blurring into a dream. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly in your mind, tying you to Joan's path. Let the snow's soft weight carry you forward to another day, another step in her fierce, fleeting journey. You're still awake, aren't you? The night is a velvet curtain now, its silence heavy, urging you to drift into dreams. But if your eyes are still open, if you're caught in the soft pull of a story half told, then let me guide you to a frost-kissed road in February 1429, winding through the war-torn heart of France. A girl named Joan, barely 17, rides toward Chinon, her breath fogging in the cold, her heart ablaze with purpose. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a forest path where hoofbeats echo and a peasant girl dares to chase a crown. Don't slip into sleep yet, this tale is too vivid, too wild to fade. You find yourself on a narrow road, the ground hard with frost crunching beneath the hooves of a small band of horses. The air is sharp, stinging your face, and smells of pine and damp earth with a faint metallic tang of armor worn by the men around you. Your cloak is heavy with morning dew, its wool rough against your neck, and you sway slightly, unused to the rhythm of a horse beneath you. The forest looms on either side, its trees bare and skeletal, their branches clawing at a gray sky. A distant owl hoots its call, soft but piercing, and you feel the weight of the journey, the uncertainty of what lies ahead. Joan rides ahead, her figure small but unyielding, wrapped in a borrowed cloak that's too big for her frame. Her horse, a sturdy bay, snorts clouds of steam, and you notice her hands still clean even after days on the road, gripping the reins with a quiet confidence. The men around her, 6 soldiers sent by Baudricourt, murmur among themselves, their voices low, their armor clinking softly. One, a grizzled man with a scar across his cheek, leans toward his companion. "She's mad thinking she'll see the Dauphin," he mutters. "But there's something about her." You smile, imagine a saint whispering to a girl who sways soldiers with nothing but words. You urge your horse closer, feeling the saddle's leather creak, and catch Joan's profile. Her jaw set, her eyes fixed on the path. The forest is quiet, save for the crunch of hooves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. A faint mist curls through the trees, carrying the scent of wet bark and something sweeter, perhaps wildflowers hidden in the underbrush. Historians debate how Joan, a peasant with no map or training, navigated this 400-mile journey through enemy lands. Some argue her escorts, seasoned men like Jean de Metz, guided her with military precision. Others suggest her voices gave her uncanny instincts, leading her past Burgundian patrols. The truth, like the mist, is elusive, slipping through the cracks of history. A sudden rustle breaks your thoughts. A rabbit darts across the path, startling the horses. Joan's bay rears slightly, but she calms it with a soft word, her voice steady as a lullaby. The men laugh, one calling out, "Maybe your saint sent that rabbit to test us." Joan turns, her smile quick and sharp. "Or to feed us if you can catch it," she retorts, and you chuckle. Imagine a saint orchestrating a rabbit chase to lighten a grim journey. The men's laughter fades, but their mood shifts as if Joan's words have woven a thread of trust among them. You notice her cross that small wooden pendant swaying as she rides a call back to the chapel in Vaucouleurs, tying her to the girl who knelt in the snow. The road stretches on the forest, thinning to reveal rolling fields, their frost-glazed grass glinting in the weak sunlight. Your hands ache from the reins and the cold seeps through your boots, but Joan seems untouched, her gaze fixed on some unseen horizon. The historical record tells us this journey took 11 days, a grueling trek through a France fractured by war. English and Burgundian forces held much of the land, and safe passage was a gamble. Yet Joan pressed on her mission, clear to reach Charles the Dauphin and convince him to fight. Scholars puzzle over her survival. Was it luck, divine protection, or the skill of her escorts? Some point to her male disguise, cropped hair, men's clothing as a practical shield. Others see her charisma, a force that turns skeptical soldiers into allies. You notice a small stream beside the road, its water gurgling over smooth stones, and the group pauses to let the horses drink. Joan dismounts, her movements stiff from the saddle, and kneels by the stream, splashing water on her face. It's a simple act, but her insistence on cleanliness stands out even here, miles from home. The men watch, one muttering, "She washes like a noble, not a peasant." You grin, imagine a soldier's confusion, wondering if saints demand spotless cheeks before battle. The water's chill makes you shiver, and you smell the faint mineral tang of the stream mixed with the earthy scent of horse sweat and leather. A horn sounds in the distance, sharp and urgent, and the men stiffen hands on swords. Joan rises, her face calm but alert, and whispers something to herself, perhaps a prayer, perhaps her voices. The moment passes, the sound fading, likely just a hunter's call, but it reminds you of the danger lurking beyond the trees. Historians note that Joan's journey was a miracle of timing, threading through enemy territory with no recorded attacks. Some argue her small group moved too quietly to notice. Others wonder if local sympathizers cleared the way their names lost to time. The debate lingers like the mist now rising from the stream, obscuring the path ahead. You remount the saddle creaking under you, and the group moves on the road climbing toward a low hill. The air grows colder, the sky heavier as if threatening snow. Joan rides slightly ahead, her cloak fluttering, and you catch a glimpse of her hands still gripping the reins with that quiet strength. A soldier, the youngest of the group, hums a tune off-key like that monk's bell in Domremy, and you smile, remembering its clumsy tolling. The sound is a thread tying you to Joan's world, to the village she's left behind. You notice a small bird perched on a branch, watching the group pass, its eyes bright and curious. You chuckle, maybe it's a spy for her saints reporting back to heaven. The road curves the forest, giving way to open fields, and you feel the journey's weight, the miles stretching toward Chinon. Joan's voice breaks the silence, soft but clear. "We'll reach him," she says to no one in particular. "God wills it." The men exchange glances, some skeptical, others intrigued, and you wonder what they see in her, a mad girl, a prophet, or something new. The historical record is sparse on their thoughts, but we know they followed her, bound by her certainty. Some historians argue her faith was contagious, a spark in a weary land. Others see her as a figurehead used by men like Baudricourt to rally a cause. The truth, like the road ahead, is hidden in shadow. The day fades, the sky bruising to dusk, and the air grows heavy with the scent of coming rain. You feel the cold deepen the horse's warmth, a small comfort beneath you. Joan rides on, her silhouette sharp against the fading light, and you sense the world shifting, the journey's end drawing near. The bird takes flight, its wings a soft whisper, and you smile. Imagine it carrying Joan's prayers to Chinon, a tiny herald for a girl who dreams of kings. The road fades, its colors softening into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly, pulling you back to her story. Let the frost's sharp bite carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting path. You ride on the road now, dipping into a shallow valley, the frost giving way to patches of mud that suck at the horse's hooves. The air is colder here, carrying the damp scent of earth and the faint sweetness of decaying leaves piled along the path. Your hands ache from the reins, the leather slick with dew, and you feel the weight of the journey settling into your shoulders, a dull throb that mirrors the group's quiet tension. The soldiers around you are silent now, their earlier chatter replaced by the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the occasional clink of armor. Joan, still ahead, seems untouched by fatigue, her posture straight, her eyes scanning the horizon as if her voices are guiding her steps. The forest is thinned, revealing a landscape scarred by war-burned fields, abandoned huts, their roofs caved in like broken promises. You notice a faint smoke rising in the distance, perhaps a village recently raided, and the smell of charred wood stings your nose. The sight makes you uneasy, a reminder of the danger that stalks this road. Joan, though, rides undaunted, her cloak fluttering like a banner. You catch a glimpse of her cross, that wooden pendant glinting faintly in the dim light, a thread tying her to the chapel in Vaucouleurs, to the meadow in Domremy. It's a small thing, but it grounds you, a constant in her shifting world. A soldier, the one with the scarred cheek, pulls alongside you, his horse snorting. She's either blessed or cursed, he mutters, his breath fogging. No girl should be this calm with enemies all around. You nod, smiling, imagine a saint keeping Joan calm while sending rabbits to spook the rest of you. His words linger, though, echoing the debates of historians who puzzle over Joan's confidence. Was it divine assurance, as she claimed, or a bold front masking fear? Some scholars argue her voices gave her a clarity that defied her youth and inexperience. Others suggest she was coached perhaps by priests or local supporters to project certainty. The records are vague, her escort's testimonies lost or incomplete, leaving only fragments to piece together. You pass a small shrine by the road, its wooden cross weathered and leaning, surrounded by wilted flowers left by some passing pilgrim. Joan slows her gaze, lingering on it, and you wonder if she sees her saints there standing in the frost. The historical record notes that her faith was unshakable, rooted in these small acts of devotion, yet historians debate how she learned the language of piety. Some say Domremi's priest taught her prayers and prophecies, shaping her mission. Others argue her knowledge was intuitive, drawn from a deep well of belief. The truth, like the shrine's fading flowers, is fragile, open to interpretation. A sudden gust carries the scent of rain, and you feel a drop on your cheek, cold and sharp. The soldiers pull their cloaks tighter, one cursing under his breath as his horse slips in the mud. Joan turns, her voice cutting through the wind. "Keep faith," she says, her words simple but heavy. "We're closer than you think." The men exchange glances, some rolling their eyes, but you notice the youngest soldier, the one who hummed earlier, nods slightly as if her words have taken root. You smile, imagine a saint whispering encouragement through the rain like a celestial cheerleader. The road climbs again, the mud giving way to gravel that crunches underfoot. You feel the horse's warmth beneath you, a small comfort against the growing chill. The sky darkens, clouds heavy with the promise of a storm, and you catch the faint rumble of thunder, distant but ominous. Joan rides on, her figure small against the vast shadowed landscape, and you feel a pang of awe. Or is it pity for this girl who carries a nation's hope? Historians note that her journey to Chinon was a turning point, the moment she stepped from village obscurity to royal courts. But how did she survive the road's dangers? Some credit her escort's skill, others her own uncanny instincts, perhaps guided by those mysterious voices. You notice a small detail as you ride. Joan's hands gripping the reins are still clean, though the rest of you are splattered with mud. It's absurd, almost comical, and you grin. Imagine her saints handing her a celestial washcloth, keeping her spotless amid the grime. The thought fades as you spot a flicker of movement in the trees, a deer, its eyes glinting, then gone. The soldiers tense, but Joan doesn't flinch, her focus unbroken. The moment passes, the forest quiet again, save for the patter of rain now falling steadily. The road stretches on the world, narrowing to the rhythm of hooves and the sting of rain on your face. You feel the journey's weight, the uncertainty of what awaits in Chinon. Joan's voice, soft but clear, breaks the silence again. "God's will is near," she says, and you wonder if she believes it fully or if doubt ever creeps in. The historical record is silent on her inner thoughts, but her actions, bold, relentless, speak louder than words. The rain falls harder, blurring the path, and the world softens its edges, fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly in your mind, tying you to Joan's path. Let the rain's cold touch carry you forward to another moment, another step in her fierce, fleeting journey. You're still with me, aren't you? The night is deep, and still it's quiet, wrapping you like a soft blanket, whispering of sleep. But if your eyes are still open, if you're caught in the gentle pull of a story that burns brighter than the stars, then let me take you to Chinon, to a grand hall in March 1429. A girl named Joan, barely 17, stands before a man who might be king, her voice steady in a world of whispers and doubt. Lie back, Let the darkness blur and come with me to a shadowed court where candlelight flickers and a peasant girl dares to speak of destiny. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too bold, too luminous to fade. You find yourself in a vast hall in Chignon Castle, its stone walls soaring into shadow, cold despite the fires blazing in twin hearths. The air smells of beeswax and old wood with a faint tang of wine spilled on the rushes underfoot. Your boots sink into the soft floor, the straw crunching faintly, and you feel the weight of eyes, courtiers in velvet, their jewels glinting, watching you as if you're an intruder. Torches sputter along the walls, casting light that dances across tapestries faded by time, their threads depicting battles long forgotten. A low hum of voices fills the space like a hive stirred to life, and you catch the clink of goblets, the rustle of silk, the soft creak of armor from guards at the door. At the hall's far end, on a carved wooden throne, sits a man, slight, pale, uncertain, Charles the Dauphin, though some whisper he's no true heir. Around him nobles cluster, their faces a mix of curiosity and scorn. And there, standing before them, is Joan, her travel-worn cloak replaced with a simple tunic, still impossibly clean despite the muddy road from Vaucouleurs. Her hair is cropped short, boyish, and her hands are clasped steady as stone. You step closer, weaving through the crowd, feeling the press of bodies and the faint heat of their breath. Joan's voice rings out, clear and unyielding. "My lord, I am sent by God to lead you to your crown," she says, and the hall falls silent, the words hanging like a challenge. A noble laughs, a sharp, mocking sound. A peasant girl sent by God, he sneers, adjusting his fur-lined cloak. "Next my hound will prophesy." You smile, imagine a dog barking divine revelations, tail wagging with holy zeal. Charles leans forward, his eyes narrow, and you notice his fingers fidgeting with a ring, as if unsure whether to believe or dismiss her. Joan steps closer, her boots scuffing the rushes, and says something low, too soft for you to hear. The Dauphin's face changes pale, then flushed as if she's struck a hidden nerve. You wonder what she said, what secret passed between them. Historians puzzle over this moment recorded in the chronicles of 1429, Joan's first meeting with Charles in Chignon's great hall. Some say she identified him despite a courtly ruse where he hid among his nobles to test her. Others argue she offered a divine sign, perhaps a private revelation about his legitimacy, shaking his doubt. Was it a miracle or clever guesswork based on rumors she'd heard? The records are vague, her exact words unrecorded, leaving scholars to debate whether her insight was supernatural or shrewd. You feel the hall's tension, the air heavy with suspicion, and notice Joan's cross, that wooden pendant glinting faintly in the candlelight, a call back to the frost-kissed road to the chapel in Vaucouleurs. You find a spot near a pillar, its stone cool against your shoulder, and watch as the courtiers whisper, their voices a soft buzz. A woman in a velvet gown, her hair braided with gold, leans toward a companion. "She's too bold for a peasant," she murmurs. "What if she's a witch?" You grin. Imagine a witch scrubbing her hands clean before casting spells, her cauldron gleaming. The companion shrugs, but his eyes linger on Joan, intrigued despite himself. The hall's warmth is stifling now, the fire's heat mingling with the scent of wax and the faint sourness of unwashed bodies beneath fine clothes. Joan speaks again, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "I will lead your armies to Orléans," she says, "and you will be crowned at Rheims." The Dauphin hesitates, his gaze flicking to his advisers who shift uncomfortably. A cleric, his robe stiff with embroidery, steps forward, his voice sharp. "Prove your voices, girl, or we'll send you back to your sheep." Joan meets his eyes unflinching. "Test me," she says, "and you'll see God's will." You feel a chill not from the cold stone, but from her certainty, a force that seems to bend the room around her. The historical record tells us Charles didn't immediately trust Joan. He sent her to Poitiers for examination by theologians. But this moment, her bold stand in Chinon was pivotal. Why did Charles, a cautious man, entertain her at all? Some historians argue he was desperate with France crumbling under English advances. Others suggest political allies, perhaps the Duke of Alençon, saw her as a rallying symbol. The debate swirls like the smoke curling from the hearths obscuring the truth. You notice a small detail: Joan's hands, still clean despite the hall's grime, are clasped so tightly. Her knuckles are white, betraying a flicker of nerves beneath her calm. A sudden clatter breaks the tension, a goblet knocked from a table, its wine splashing like blood on the rushes. A courtier curses and laughter ripples through the crowd, easing the mood. You smile, imagine a saint tripping over a goblet to lighten Joan's path. The Dauphin rises, signaling the end of the audience, and Joan steps back, her face unreadable. You catch a whiff of lavender as she passes, a faint scent clinging to her tunic, and it reminds you of the meadow in Domremy where she knelt under an oak. The hall's noise swells, voices overlapping, and you hear that off-key bell again, faint in your mind like the monk's clumsy tolling, tying you to her story. You follow Joan as she leaves the hall, the heavy doors creaking shut behind her. Outside, the night air is sharp, smelling of damp stone and distant rain. The castle courtyard is quiet, save for the soft clop of horses and the murmur of guards. Joan pauses, looking up at the stars, her breath fogging in the cold. You notice a small bird, a sparrow, perched on a nearby wall, watching her with bright eyes. You chuckle, maybe it's her saint's messenger reporting back to heaven. The historical record notes that Joan's meeting with Charles sparked her rise, but her next steps were uncertain, her fate resting on the cleric's judgment. Scholars debate her motives. Was she driven by pure faith, or did she seek glory in a world that offered her none? The truth, like the stars above, is distant, half-hidden. The courtyard fades its stones, blurring into shadow, and you feel the night's weight, the cold seeping through your cloak. Joan's silhouette lingers small but fierce against the castle's walls. The world softens its colors, melting into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the starlight's quiet glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You linger in the courtyard, the night air sharp against your skin, carrying the scent of wet stone and the faint musk of horses stabled nearby. The castle looms above its towers, black against a sky pricked with stars, their light cold and distant. Your boots scrape on the cobbles, the sound swallowed by the quiet, and you feel the weight of Chignon's walls as if they hold centuries of secrets. Joan stands a few paces away, her breath visible in the chill, her eyes still fixed on the stars. Her tunic, though plain, is untouched by the courtyard's dust, and you smile. Imagine her saints brushing off every speck, keeping her spotless for destiny. A guard passes, his armor clinking softly, and glances at Joan, his face a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Back to your prayers, girl," he mutters, his voice gruff but not cruel. Joan doesn't answer, her silence a shield, and you chuckle. Imagine a saint telling her to ignore grumpy guards, saving her words for kings. The guard moves on his lantern, casting a pool of light that flickers across the cobbles, and you notice a small detail. Joan's hands, clasped tightly, are trembling slightly, betraying the courage she showed in the hall. It's a human moment, a crack in her armor, and it makes her feel closer, less like a legend. You step closer, the cold stone underfoot grounding you, and feel the night's stillness settle over the courtyard. The historical record tells us that after this meeting, Charles sent Joan to Poitiers for a theological examination, a test of her claims. But what happened in that private exchange with the Dauphin? Some historians argue she revealed a secret about his birth, perhaps his mother's doubts about his legitimacy, which shook him to his core. Others suggest she offered no proof, only conviction, and Charles, desperate for hope, grasped at it. The records are maddeningly vague, with courtiers' accounts contradicting each other, leaving scholars to piece together a puzzle with missing edges. A sudden sound breaks the quiet, a horse's whinny from the stable, sharp and startling. Joan turns, her face calm but alert, and you wonder if she's listening to her voices, even now their whispers louder than the night's noises. The air carries a faint scent of hay mixed with the damp chill of the castle's stones, and you pull your cloak tighter, feeling the wool's roughness. A courtier emerges from the hall, his velvet cloak brushing the ground, and pauses to stare at Joan. "She'll either save us or burn," he mutters to himself, then hurries off. You grin, imagine a saint flipping a coin to decide France's fate with Joan as the wager. The historical debate about Joan's sign to Charles fascinates, like the stars above that seem to shift as you watch. Some argue it was a calculated move, perhaps fed by gossip she'd heard on the road. Others see it as divine, a moment where her voices spoke truth no one else could know. The truth, like the courtyard shadows, is fluid, impossible to pin down. You notice Joan's cross again, its wooden edge is worn but polished, a callback to the streamside shrine on the road to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread weaving her journey, tying this moment to the girl who knelt in frost and starlight. You move to a low wall sitting on its cold stone and watch as Joan begins to pace her boots, scuffing the cobbles. The motion is restless, as if her voices won't let her rest, and you feel a pang of something, admiration perhaps, or sorrow for the weight she carries. A small bird, that sparrow again, hops along the wall, its tiny claws scratching faintly. You smile, maybe it's her saint scout keeping an eye on her courage. The bird flits away and you hear a distant bell, not the off-key tolling of Domremy's monk, but a deeper chime, Chinon's own, marking the hour. Still you think of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant in Joan's world, tying you to her path. The courtyard grows quieter, the guards' voices fading, the night deepening. You feel the cold bite deeper, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Joan stops pacing, her gaze returning to the stars, and you wonder what she sees, her saints, her future, or just the endless sky. The historical record notes that this meeting was a turning point, setting Joan on the path to Poitiers, to Orléans, to a crown. But why did Charles, a man ruled by doubt, give her a chance? Some historians point to his advisors, desperate for a miracle. Others see Joan's charisma, a force that bent even a king's will. The debate lingers like the smoke you still smell from the hall's hearths drifting into the night. You rise, the stone's chill lingering in your bones, and follow Joan as she moves toward a side gate, her steps sure despite the dark. The courtyard fades, its lights blurring, and you hear that off-key bell again, faint in your mind, pulling you back to her story. The stars above pulse softly, their light a guide through the haze. Let their quiet glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a soft veil now, its silence wrapping you gently, coaxing you toward dreams. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the quiet glow of a story that refuses to fade, then let me take you to Poitiers, to a candle-lit chamber in March 1429. A girl named Joan, not yet 17, faces a circle of clerics, her voice steady in a room thick with doubt. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a place where faith is weighed against logic, where a peasant girl's words spark whispers of miracle and madness. Don't drift off yet. This tale is too sharp, too fragile to slip away. You stand in a stone chamber in Poitiers, its walls damp and cool, the air heavy with the scent of wax and musty parchment. Narrow windows let in slivers of gray light barely cutting through the gloom, and candles flicker on a long table, their flames casting shadows that writhe like uneasy spirits. Your boots scuff the uneven floor, the stone worn smooth by centuries of steps, and you feel a chill seep through your cloak, its wool damp from the morning's drizzle. The room is crowded with clerics, their robes rustling softly, their faces a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Quills scratch against parchment, a steady insect-like sound as they record every word spoken here. At the center of the room stands Joan, her tunic simple but clean, her cropped hair catching the candlelight like burnished bronze. She's flanked by theologians, their eyes sharp, their questions sharper. A tall cleric, his beard streaked with gray, leans forward, his voice dry as old leaves. You claim God speaks to you, girl. Prove it or we'll name you heretic. Joan meets his gaze, her hands clasped steady despite the weight of their scrutiny. My voices come from God, she says, her voice clear, and they bid me save France. The room stirs a murmur rippling through the clerics, and you smile. Imagine a saint whispering answers to Joan like a divine tutor before a test. You find a spot against the wall, the stone cold against your shoulder, and watch as Joan stands firm, her presence a quiet fire in the dim room. The historical record tells us that in March 1429, Charles sent Joan to Poitiers for a formal examination by theologians tasked with testing her claims of divine mission. They questioned her for weeks, probing her faith, her visions, her very sanity. Historians debate what happened in these sessions, as the records are incomplete, lost to time, or destroyed. Some argue the clerics were swayed by her conviction, seeing her as a God-sent symbol to rally France. Others suggest they found no fault only because they feared the political fallout of condemning her. The truth, like the candlelight, flickers and eludes. A cleric coughs the sound harsh in the quiet and adjusts a stack of papers, their edges curling with age. Tell us of your saints, he says, his tone edged with doubt. Do they wear crowns, speak in Latin? A few clerics chuckle and you grin. Imagine St. Michael tripping over Latin conjugations, his halo askew. Joan's lips twitch, but she answers calmly. They speak as I do in the tongue of my village, and they bid me act. The room falls silent, the quills pausing, and you feel the weight of her words, simple yet heavy like the stones beneath your feet. You notice her cross that wooden pendant, glinting faintly, a callback to the starlit courtyard in Chinon, to the frost-kissed road before. It's a thread weaving her journey, tying this moment to the girl who rode through danger. The air grows warmer, the candle's heat mingling with the faint scent of ink and old wool from the cleric's robes. A young scribe, his fingers stained black, glances at Joan with something like awe, then quickly looks away as if caught in a forbidden thought. You smile, maybe he's imagining her saints taking notes, their quills scratching alongside his. The historical debate about Poitiers centers on the missing records. Why were they lost? Some historians argue they were deliberately destroyed, perhaps to hide divisions among the clerics. Others suggest they were simply misplaced victims of war's chaos. The surviving accounts praise Joan's simplicity, her unwavering faith, but they're frustratingly vague, like shadows cast by a wavering flame. You feel the room's tension, the cleric's eyes boring into Joan, searching for a crack in her resolve. She stands straight, her hands now relaxed, though you notice a faint tremor in her fingers, a human flicker beneath her certainty. A sudden clatter breaks the silence, a candle falling from the table, its wax splattering on the floor. A cleric curses softly, and the others laugh, the sound easing the room's weight. You grin. Imagine a saint knocking over candles to give Joan a moment's reprieve. The head cleric, unruffled, presses on. "If God sends you, why do you dress as a man?" he asks, his tone sharp. Joan's answer is quick. "To ride and fight I must," she says. "My voices care not for my clothes, only my heart." The room stirs again, some clerics nodding, others frowning, and you feel the air shift as if her words have tipped an invisible scale. You step closer, the floor's chill seeping through your boots, and catch a whiff of lavender, faint but unmistakable, clinging to Joan's tunic. It reminds you of the meadow in Domremy where she knelt under an oak whispering to saints. The historical record notes that the Poitiers examination ended with the cleric's approval declaring Joan's mission divine, though they urged her to prove it through action. Why did they agree? Some historians argue Charles's court pressured them, desperate for a symbol to unite France. Others see Joan's charisma, her ability to answer without faltering, as the key. The debate lingers like the wax now hardening on the floor, a small, stubborn mark of this moment. A bell tolls outside, deep and resonant, not the off-key chime of Domremy's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. The clerics rise their chairs, scraping, signaling the session's end. Joan steps back, her face calm, but her eyes bright, as if her voices are whispering still. You follow her as she leaves the chamber, the heavy door creaking shut, and step into a corridor where the air is colder, smelling of damp stone and distant rain. A small bird flits past a window, its wings a soft blur, and you chuckle. Maybe it's her saint's messenger carrying their approval to the heavens. The corridor fades, its shadows softening, and you feel the night's weight, the cold lingering in your bones. Joan's silhouette lingers small but fierce against the stone walls. The world blurs its colors, melting into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly in your mind, pulling you back to her path. Let the candle light's fading glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You linger in the corridor, the air cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked stone and the lingering wax from the chamber behind. The candlelight from the open door casts long shadows stretching across the floor like fingers reaching for Joan. Your cloak feels heavy now, its wool sodden from the drizzle outside, and you shift your weight, feeling the stones chill through your boots. The corridor is narrow, its walls lined with tapestries so faded their scenes, hunts, battles, saints, are barely discernible. A distant drip of water echoes a steady pulse in the quiet, and you feel the weight of Poitiers, this city of scrutiny, pressing around you. Joan walks ahead, her steps sure despite the dim light, her tunic still clean, a stark contrast to the grime-streaked walls. You notice her hands no longer trembling, clasped loosely at her sides, and that wooden cross at her throat catching the faint glow of a wall-mounted torch. It's a callback to the starlit courtyard in Chinon, to the meadow in Domremy, a thread weaving her journey through these moments of doubt and defiance. A cleric hurries past his robes, brushing your arm, and mutters to himself, "She's either heaven's child or a fool." You smile, imagine a saint grading Joan's exam, scribbling pass with a celestial quill. The historical debate about Poitiers grows sharper here as scholars wrestle with the cleric's decision. Why did they approve her, a peasant girl with no formal education? Some argue the court's desperation drove the verdict. France needed a miracle, and Joan was a convenient symbol. Others point to her answers recorded as simple yet profound, disarming even the sharpest theologians. The missing records fuel speculation. Were they burned to hide dissent or lost in the chaos of war? You feel the chamber's weight lingering, the scratch of quills still echoing in your mind, a sound as persistent as the questions that haunt historians. You follow Joan through the corridor, the air growing colder as you near an outer door. A gust of wind carries the scent of wet earth and pine, and you hear the soft patter of rain outside. Joan pauses her hand on the door and glances back as if sensing the eyes still on her. A young page no older than 12 scurries by carrying a stack of parchments that slip and scatter across the floor. "Saints, preserve me," he exclaims, and you grin. Imagine Joan's saints tripping a page to test her patience. She bends to help him gather the papers, her movements quick but gentle, and you see a flicker of kindness in her eyes, a reminder of the girl who washed laundry by a stream. The page blushes, muttering thanks, and hurries off, leaving you and Joan alone in the corridor. The historical record notes that the Poitiers examination lasted 3 weeks, with Joan questioned on theology, morality, and her visions. The clerics' approval was cautious. They declared her good, but demanded she prove her mission through deeds. Why such a vague verdict? Some historians argue the clerics hedged their bets, wary of condemning a figure who might sway the war. Others see genuine belief sparked by Joan's unyielding faith. The debate is a shadow, like the torchlight now flickering, casting Joan's face in half light, half darkness. You step outside as Joan pushes the door open, the rain a soft curtain that wets your face. The courtyard is dark, its cobbles slick and gleaming, and the air smells of mud and distant smoke. Joan pulls her cloak tighter, the fabric still clean despite the weather, and you smile. Imagine her saints holding an umbrella over her, keeping every drop at bay. A guard watches from a doorway, his lantern casting a pool of light, and nods to Joan, a rare gesture of respect. You wonder what he sees, a mad girl, a prophet, or something new born of this rain-soaked night. The rain falls harder, its rhythm soothing, and you feel the cold seep deeper, the courtyard stones blurring under the downpour. Joan moves toward a small chapel across the yard, its wooden door ajar, a faint glow spilling out. The historical record tells us she prayed often during the Poitiers examination, seeking strength from her voices. Some historians argue these prayers were her anchor, grounding her in a world of doubt. Others see them as a performance, a way to convince the clerics of her piety. The truth, like the rain now pooling on the cobbles, is fluid, impossible to hold. You pause, the rain dripping from your cloak, and watch Joan enter the chapel, her silhouette framed by candlelight. A bird, perhaps that same sparrow, flits under the eaves, its wings a soft flutter against the storm. You chuckle. Maybe it's her saint's courier delivering their verdict to God. The courtyard fades its sounds, the rain, the distant bell blending into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell that Monk's clumsy tolling from Domremy echoes faintly in your mind, tying you to Joan's path. Let the rain's soft rhythm carry you forward to another moment, another step in her fierce, fleeting journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a gentle cradle, now its silence rocking you toward sleep, its darkness soft as a whispered tale. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the quiet fire of a story that burns through time, then let me take you to tour to a bustling workshop in April 1429. A girl named Joan, not yet 17, is about to don armor and raise a banner, her presence a spark in a world of iron and doubt. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a place where steel sings and a peasant girl becomes a warrior. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too bright, too bold to fade into the night. You stand in a cramped workshop in Tours, the air thick with the metallic tang of heated iron and the sharp scent of polished leather. Sunlight streams through a high window, dust motes dancing in its beams, and the room hums with activity. The clang of hammers, the rasp of files, the low murmur of craftsmen at work. Your boots scuff the straw-strewn floor, gritty with metal shavings, and you feel the heat of a nearby forge, its glow painting the walls in flickering orange. The workshop is alive, a heartbeat of clinks and thuds, and you weave through tables piled with tools, your cloak brushing against a stack of polished breastplates that gleam like mirrors. At the center of the chaos stands Joan, her slight frame draped in a half-finished suit of armor, its plates catching the light like new silver. A smith, his hands blackened from the forge, adjusts a strap on her shoulder, his movements careful but gruff. "Hold still, girl," he mutters, "or this'll pinch worse than a devil's bite." Joan laughs a quick, bright sound, and you smile. Imagine a saint chuckling at a devil's pinch, polishing her halo for battle. Her tunic is gone, replaced by this gleaming shell. But her wooden cross still hangs at her throat, a call back to the candle-lit chamber in Poitiers, to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying her to the girl she was, even as she becomes something new. You step closer, feeling the floor's warmth through your boots, and notice a white banner on a nearby table, its edges embroidered with gold lilies and the names Jesus Maria. Joan's eyes linger on it, her fingers brushing the fabric as if it's sacred. "This will lead us," she says, her voice soft but certain, and the smith pauses, glancing at her with a mix of awe and confusion. The historical record tells us that in April 1429, Joan commissioned this banner in Tours, insisting it be carried into battle. Historians debate her obsession with it. Was it a divine symbol inspired by her voices, or a strategic tool to rally soldiers? Some argue it was both a fusion of faith and tactics. Others see it as a prop crafted to cement her authority. The truth, like the banner's folds, is layered and unclear. A sudden clang, a hammer striking an anvil, breaks your thoughts, and you flinch, the sound ringing in your ears. The smith curses, dropping a red-hot plate, and you grin. Imagine a saint tripping the smith to keep Joan's armor perfect. The workshop's noise swells, hammers pounding in rhythm, and you catch the scent of oil used to polish the steel, sharp and faintly sweet. A young apprentice, his face smudged with soot, stares at Joan, his eyes wide. "She's really going to fight," he whispers to a companion who snorts. "Fight, she'll scare the English with that banner alone." You chuckle. Imagine the English fleeing from a flapping cloth, mistaking it for divine wrath. You move to a corner leaning against a wooden beam, its surface rough with splinters, and watch as Joan tests the armor's weight, her movements awkward but determined. The plates clank softly, a sound both foreign and fitting, and you notice her hand still clean despite the workshop's grime gripping the banner's pole. Historians puzzle over who funded this armor, a costly gift for a peasant girl. Some say Charles Court paid, seeing her as a necessary symbol. Others suggest local nobles, perhaps moved by her Poitiers verdict, chipped in. The records are vague, with no clear donor named, leaving scholars to speculate about hidden benefactors. You feel the workshop's heat, the air heavy with purpose, and wonder who believed in Joan enough to clad her in steel. A woman enters, carrying a bundle of cloth, and nods to Joan. "Your cloak's mended," she says, her voice brisk. "Try not to tear it in battle." Joan smiles, taking the cloak, and you notice its clean edges, a stark contrast to the workshop's chaos. You smile. Imagine her saint stitching, her cloak needles flashing in heavenly light. The woman lingers, watching Joan with a mix of pride and worry, and you wonder what she sees: a girl, a warrior, or something more. The historical record notes that Joan's armor and banner were ready by late April, preparing her for the march to Orléans. But why the banner's design? Some historians argue it was her vision dictated by saints. Others see it as a collaborative effort shaped by clerics to fit prophecy. The workshop grows quieter, the craftsman pausing to watch Joan lift the banner, its white cloth catching the light like a sail. The air feels charged, as if the room holds its breath, and you hear a faint bell in the distance, not the off-key tolling of Dom Remy's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. A small bird, a sparrow, flits through the open window, perching on a beam, its eyes bright as it watches Joan. You chuckle. Maybe it's her saint scout approving her new armor. The historical debate about Joan's banner lingers like the forge's heat still warming your skin. Was it a symbol of faith or a calculated emblem to inspire troops? The records mention its prominence in battle, but its exact role, spiritual or practical, remains unclear. You watch Joan turn the banner, raised her face alight with purpose. The workshop fades its sounds, the clang of hammers, the rasp of files blending into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly in your mind, pulling you back to her path. Let the forge's fading glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You linger in the workshop, the air growing warmer as the forge's fire crackles, sending sparks spiraling upward like tiny stars. The scent of hot metal and oiled leather clings to your clothes, mingling with the faint sweetness of straw scattered across the floor. Your fingers brush the wooden beam, its splinters catching your skin, and you feel the workshop's pulse, a rhythm of clangs and murmurs that seems to echo Joan's heartbeat. She stands near the table, the banner now draped over her arm, its white cloth glowing in the firelight. The smith steps back, wiping sweat from his brow, and nods approvingly. "It fits," he says, his voice gruff but tinged with respect. Joan turns, testing the armor's weight, and you notice her shoulders square as if she's already carrying the weight of France. The craftsmen resume their work, hammers striking in a steady cadence, and you catch a whiff of burning wood, sharp and nostalgic as a log collapses in the forge. Joan's banner, with its gold lilies and sacred names, seems almost alive, its fabric rippling as she moves. You wonder why it matters so much to her, this cloth that will face swords and arrows. Historians debate this fiercely. Some see the banner as a divine mandate, its design dictated by her voices to signal God's will. Others argue it was a practical choice, a visible rallying point for soldiers weary of war. The records mention Joan's insistence on carrying it herself, but the reasons, spiritual, strategic, or both, remain a mystery, like the sparks now fading into the workshop's rafters. A sudden laugh breaks the rhythm, a young apprentice, his hands smeared with oil, teasing another. "She'll outshine us all with that banner," he says, dodging a playful swat. You grin. Imagine a saint designing a banner so bright it blinds the English, leaving them stumbling in defeat. The moment lightens the room, and you notice Joan smile, a rare softness in her face, as if she's grateful for the break in tension. Her cross, that wooden pendant, catches the firelight, a callback to the stream-side shrine, to the starlit courtyard in Chinon. It's a thread weaving her story, grounding her in this moment of transformation. You move closer, the floor's grit crunching under your boots, and feel the forge's heat against your face, a contrast to the cool air seeping through the window. A craftsman, older, with hands scarred from years at the anvil, watches Joan with narrowed eyes. "Who paid for all this?" he mutters to a companion, his voice low. "No peasant girl gets armor like that." The companion shrugs, but you catch the question's weight. Historians puzzle over this too. Who funded Joan's transformation? Some point to Charles's treasury, drained but willing to bet on a symbol. Others suggest anonymous donors, perhaps merchants or minor nobles, saw profit in her cause. The records are silent, leaving only speculation like the smoke curling from the forge. The historical record tells us Joan's armor was simple but well-made, designed for function, not show. By late April 1429, she was ready to march to Orleans, her banner a beacon for the troops. But why did she insist on white armor unadorned except for her faith? Some historians argue it was a statement of purity aligning with her visions. Others see practicality, a clear target for her men to follow in battle's chaos. You watch Joan lift the banner again, its cloth unfurling, and feel the room's energy shift as if the craftsman sense her purpose. A hammer slips, striking a wrong note, and you smile. Maybe her saints are testing the smiths, ensuring their work is worthy. Outside, the day fades, the sunlight through the window turning golden, casting long shadows across the workshop. You hear a faint bell in the distance, not Dom Remy's off-key chime, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You think of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread, and chuckle softly. A bird, that sparrow, again hops along the windowsill, its tiny claws scratching the wood. You grin, maybe it's her saint's messenger inspecting the banner's stitches. Joan turns to the smith, her voice quiet but firm. "It's ready," she says, and you feel the weight of those words, a step toward battles yet to come. The workshop grows quieter, the hammers slowing as the craftsmen watch Joan. She stands taller now, the armor no longer awkward, as if she's grown into it. You feel the forge's heat linger the air, heavy with purpose, and notice a small detail. Her hands, still clean despite the workshop's grime, grip the banner's pole with a steady strength. The historical debate about her funding and banner swirls like the smoke now rising to the rafters. Who believed in her enough to arm her? Why did the banner matter so much? The truth, like the fading light, is slipping away. The workshop blurs its sounds, softening the clangs, the murmurs into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the forge's dying glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still awake, aren't you? The night is a soft whisper now, its silence curling around you like a gentle breeze lulling you toward sleep. But if you're still here, if you're caught in the quiet fire of a story that refuses to dim, then let me take you to a muddy road outside Orleans in late April 1429. A girl named Joan, not yet 17, marches with an army, her white banner snapping in the wind, her heart set on a city under siege. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a camp where fires burn low and a peasant girl becomes a beacon. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too fierce, too vivid to fade into the dark. You stand on a rutted road, the ground soft with spring mud sucking at your boots with every step. The air is damp, heavy with the scent of wet earth and wood smoke tinged with the faint sourness of unwashed men and horses. Dawn is breaking, its pale light filtering through a gray sky, casting shadows across a sprawling camp of tents and flickering fires. Your cloak is heavy, soaked from last night's rain, and you feel the chill bite your fingers, the wool rough against your skin. The camp hums with restless energy, the clank of armor, the low murmur of soldiers, the occasional whinny of a horse tethered nearby. Ahead, Joan rides at the head of the column, her white armor gleaming despite the mud, her banner raised high, its gold lilies catching the dawn's light. Her horse, a sturdy gray, steps carefully through the mire, and you notice her hands still clean, impossibly so, gripping the banner's pole with a quiet strength. Soldiers watch her, some with awe, others with doubt, their faces weathered by war. A grizzled captain, his helmet dented, leans toward a companion. "A girl leading us to Orleans," he mutters. "Might as well send my mule." You smile. Imagine a mule waving a banner, trotting proudly into battle. Joan's voice cuts through the murmurs clear and sharp. "Keep faith," she calls. "God wills our victory." You fall into step behind the column, the mud squelching underfoot, and feel the weight of the march, the air thick with purpose and fear. The historical record tells us that in April 1429, Joan joined the French army to relieve the besieged city of Orleans, a key stronghold in the 100 Years' War. Her presence rallied the troops, but historians debate her role. Was she a commander directing tactics or a symbol inspiring courage? Some argue her voices gave her strategic insight, guiding the army's moves. Others insist she was a figurehead, her banner a morale boost while seasoned captains planned the fight. The truth, like the mud clinging to your boots, is messy and unclear. A sudden shout breaks your thoughts, a soldier tripping over a tent rope, his armor clattering as he falls. Laughter ripples through the camp, and Joan turns her smile quick and bright. "Save your strength for the English," she calls, and the men chuckle, their mood lifting. You grin, imagine a saint tripping a soldier to test his balance, chuckling from the heavens. The moment passes, and the column moves on the road, winding toward Orleans' distant walls. You catch a whiff of roasting meat from a nearby fire, mingled with the damp scent of canvas, tents, and your stomach rumbles, a reminder of the march's long hours. You notice Joan's banner again, its white cloth snapping in the breeze, the names Jesus Maria bold against the dawn. Historians puzzle over its power. Was it a holy relic, as Joan claimed, or a psychological weapon rallying men to a cause? The records note its prominence in battle, but its exact role, spiritual or practical, remains debated. You see a soldier touch his cap as he passes Joan, a gesture of respect, and wonder what he sees: a prophet, a warrior, or a girl barely older than his daughter. Her cross, that wooden pendant, sways at her throat, a call back to the forge in Tours, to the meadow in Domremy, tying her to the girl she was. The road climbs slightly, the mud giving way to gravel that crunches underfoot. You feel the air grow cooler, the sky heavy with the threat of rain. A soldier sings softly, his voice off-key, and you smile, thinking of that monk's bell in Domremy, its clumsy tolling, a constant thread through Joan's story. The historical record tells us the march to Orleans was a gamble. English forces surrounded the city, and the French were weary, outnumbered. Yet Joan's arrival sparked hope, her banner a beacon in the chaos. Some historians argue her presence shifted the siege's momentum. Others say the captain's strategies, not her voice, made the difference. The debate lingers like the smoke curling from the campfires. You pause by a fire, its warmth a brief comfort against the chill, and watch Joan dismount, her armor clanking softly. She kneels, whispering a prayer, her banner planted in the mud beside her. A soldier nearby, his face scarred, watches her, then mutters, "If she's wrong, we're all dead." You chuckle. Imagine a saint overhearing, shaking their head at his doubt. The soldier tosses a stick into the fire, sending sparks skyward, and you feel the camp's tension, a mix of faith and fear. The historical debate about Joan's tactical role grows sharper here. Did she plan the assault, or was she a symbol carried by others' expertise? The records are vague, her own words focused on faith, not strategy. The march resumes, the column stretching toward Orleans, its walls now faintly visible through the morning haze. You feel the mud's weight on your boots, the air sharp with the scent of rain and smoke. Joan remounts, her banner raised, and you notice a small bird, a sparrow, perched on a nearby tent, watching her with bright eyes. You grin, maybe it's her saint scout reporting her progress to heaven. The world blurs, the camp sounds, the clank of armor, the soldiers' murmurs fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly tying you to Joan's path. Let the fire's fading glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in her fierce, fleeting journey. You trudge on the road to Orleans, growing softer, the mud clinging like a jealous lover to your boots. The air is heavier now, the scent of wood smoke mingling with the damp musk of earth and the faint tang of sweat from the soldiers around you. Your cloak drags its hem caked with grime, and you feel the ache in your legs, the march's rhythm sinking into your bones. The sky remains gray, its clouds low and brooding, and you hear the distant rumble of thunder, a low growl that makes the horses twitch. The camp is behind you now, its fires reduced to faint glows, but Joan's banner still leads the way, its white cloth a stark contrast to the muddy world snapping defiantly in the breeze. Joan rides steadily, her armor glinting even in the dim light, her face set with a calm that feels almost otherworldly. You notice her hands again, gripping the banner's pole still clean despite the road's filth, and you smile. Imagine her saints handing her a celestial rag, wiping away the mud of war. The soldiers march in loose ranks, their armor clanking their voices, a low hum of complaints and jests. One, a young man with a patchy beard, nudges his companion. "She says God's with us," he mutters, "but I'd rather have more swords." His friend laughs, and you grin. Imagine a saint delivering a cartload of blades with a note saying, "Courtesy of heaven." The historical debate about Joan's role in the Orleans campaign is fierce, like the wind now tugging at your cloak. The records confirm her arrival on April 29, 1429, lifted the French troops' spirits, but her tactical influence is less clear. Some historians argue she inspired key decisions like attacking the English fortifications, directly guided by her voices. Others insist she was a symbolic figure, her banner a rallying point, while captains like Dunois planned the assault. The chronicles mention her presence at strategy meetings, but her exact contributions are blurred like the horizon now fading into the haze. You feel the march's weight, the soldiers' eyes on Joan, and wonder what they believe divine mission or desperate hope. A sudden splash pulls you back, a soldier slipping in a puddle, his curse loud enough to startle a nearby horse. The men laugh, one shouting, "Watch your step, or Joan's saints will dunk you next." Joan turns, her smile fleeting but warm, and you chuckle. Imagine a saint splashing soldiers for fun, giggling in the clouds. The moment eases the march's tension, and you notice a small detail. Joan's banner, though mud-splattered at its edges, is held high, its gold lilies gleaming. The historical record notes that this banner was central to her identity, carried into every battle. Why such devotion? Some scholars see it as a sacred object, its design dictated by her voices. Others view it as a military tool, a beacon to unify the troops. You pause to catch your breath, leaning against a gnarled tree by the road, its bark rough under your hand. The air carries the scent of wet leaves and distant rain, and you feel the ground's dampness seeping through your boots. A soldier offers you a sip from his water skin, its leather worn and smelling faintly of wine. "She's got fire in her," he says, nodding toward Joan. "Hope it's enough." You nod, feeling the weight of his words, and notice her cross that wooden pendant swaying as she rides a call back to the forge in Tours to the streamside shrine. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in a meadow dreaming of saints. The road curves Orleans' walls, growing clearer, their stones scarred by English cannon. The historical record tells us the siege was dire. Orleans was France's last major stronghold, its fall a near-certain English victory. Joan's arrival, some argue, shifted the tide, her banner a symbol of defiance. Others credit the French commanders who used her presence to spur action. The debate swirls like the dust now rising from the road kicked up by marching feet. You hear that off-key bell again faint in your mind, a reminder of Domrémy's monk, his clumsy tolling weaving through Joan's story. A bird, that sparrow, flits across the path, its wings a soft blur, and you smile. Maybe it's her saint scout guiding her to battle. The march slows the army nearing the city's outskirts, and you feel the air grow heavier, the scent of mud and smoke sharpening with the tang of fear. Joan raises her banner higher, her voice ringing out. "For God and France," she cries, and the soldiers cheer, their voices ragged but strong. You feel a surge of something, hope perhaps, or awe, as the world blurs the road, fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell that Monk's clumsy tolling hums, faintly tying you to her path. Let the banner's white glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still with me, aren't you? The night is a soft cradle now, its darkness folding around you like a whispered lullaby, urging you toward sleep. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the fierce glow of a story that burns through time, then let me take you to Orléans, to its battered walls in early May 1429. A girl named Joan, not yet 17, stands amid the chaos of battle, her banner a beacon in the smoke. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a city fighting for its life, where a peasant girl dares to turn the tide. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too wild, too vivid to slip into the dark. You stand on Orléans' eastern wall, the stone rough under your hands, its surface pitted from English cannon fire. The air is thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder, mingled with the coppery tang of blood and the damp musk of earth churned by boots. Your cloak is heavy, dusted with ash, and you feel the vibration of the wall as another cannonball strikes its thud, echoing in your chest. Arrows whistle past their sharp hum, a deadly song, and below the city's defenders shout, their voices hoarse with defiance. The sky is gray, heavy with smoke, but a faint dawn light breaks through, casting shadows across the scarred battlefield. Joan is there near the wall's edge, her white armor streaked with dirt but gleaming in the half-light, her banner raised high, its gold lilies snapping in the wind. Her voice cuts through the chaos, clear and commanding. "Forward for God," she cries, urging the soldiers toward the English fortifications. Her horse, tethered nearby, snorts its breath, fogging, and you notice her hands still clean, impossibly so, gripping the banner's pole with unyielding strength. A soldier nearby, his face smudged with soot, mutters to a companion, "She's mad, charging like that." His friend laughs, dodging an arrow. "Mad or not, she's got the English running." You smile, imagine a saint cheering Joan on, waving a tiny banner from the clouds. You duck behind the wall, feeling the stone's cold bite against your back, and watch as Joan moves among the men, her presence a spark in the chaos. The historical record tells us that on May 7, 1429, Joan led a bold assault on the English stronghold at Les Tourelles, a key moment in breaking Orléans' siege. Historians debate her role. Was she a tactician directing the attack, or a symbol rallying troops with her banner? Some argue her voices gave her strategic insight, guiding the French to victory. Others insist seasoned commanders like Dunois made the plans, using Joan's charisma to inspire. The truth, like the smoke curling over the wall, is thick and hard to grasp. A sudden scream pulls you back. An archer struck his cry, sharp and fleeting. The men falter, but Joan raises her banner higher, shouting, "God wills it." The soldiers surge forward, their swords flashing, and you feel the battle's pulse, a rhythm of fear and fury. The air carries the scent of burning wood from a nearby barricade, its flames crackling, and you notice a small detail, Joan's cross, that wooden pendant swaying at her throat, a call back to the march's muddy road to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying her to the girl she was even as she becomes a warrior. You move along the wall, your boots slipping on the damp stone, and hear a soldier laugh a ragged sound. "She's got more guts than half the captains," he says, wiping blood from his sword. You grin. Imagine a saint betting on Joan in a celestial tavern, cheering louder than the angels. The historical debate about her influence at Orléans is fierce. Chronicles note her presence at the forefront, but her exact actions are unclear. Some historians argue she led charges, her banner drawing men to breach the English lines. Others see her as a morale boost, her courage amplifying the commander's plans. The records muddled by bias and time leave gaps that frustrate scholars. A cannon roars its blast, shaking the wall, and you flinch, the sound ringing in your ears. Dust falls from the stones, coating your cloak, and you smell the sharp sting of sulfur. Joan, undaunted, climbs a ladder to a higher vantage, her armor clanking, her banner steady. A soldier follows, muttering, "If she falls, we're done." You chuckle. Imagine a saint catching her mid-fall halo, glowing with effort. The battle rages below, French troops storming the English fort, their shouts mingling with the clash of steel. The historical record confirms the siege broke by May 8th, with the English retreating, a turning point in the war. But Joan's role, leader or symbol, remains debated, like the flames now licking the barricade. You pause, catching your breath, the air heavy with smoke and the faint sweetness of crushed grass from the fields beyond. A bell tolls in the city, not the off-key chime of Domremy's monk, but a deep, mournful sound tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. A bird, that sparrow, flits across the wall, dodging an arrow with a flicker of wings. You grin, maybe it's her saint's scout, dodging danger to report her courage. The world blurs, the battle's noise, the screams, the steel fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the banner's fierce glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's blazing, fleeting journey. You cling to the wall, the stone's rough edge grounding you as the battle's chaos swirls below. The air is thicker now, choked with smoke and the sharp bite of gunpowder stinging your eyes and throat. Your cloak is heavy with ash, its wool damp from the morning's mist, and you feel the wall tremble under another cannon's blast, its roar a deep wound in the dawn. The cries of men, French and English, blend with the clash of swords and the thud of arrows striking wood, a cacophony that makes your heart race. The sky is still gray, but the rising sun cuts through, painting the battlefield in streaks of gold and blood. Joan moves along the wall, her banner high, its white cloth streaked with soot, but still bold, its gold lilies a defiant flame. Her armor clanks with each step, and you notice her hands gripping the banner's pole, still clean despite the battle's grime. You smile. Imagine her saints brushing ash from her fingers, keeping her pure amid the carnage. A soldier, his face streaked with blood, pauses to watch her, his eyes wide. "She's not even flinching," he mutters to a comrade who shrugs. God or madness, she's got something. You grin, imagine a saint flipping a coin to decide if Joan's blessed or crazed, laughing from the heavens. The historical debate about Joan's role at Orléans grows sharper here, like the arrows still flying past. The Chronicles of May 1429 describe her leading charges, her banner a focal point as the French stormed English fortifications. Some historians argue she shaped the strategy, her voices guiding key assaults like the one on Les Tourelles. Others insist she was a figurehead, her presence a morale boost, while commanders like La Hire and Dunois directed the fight. The records written by admirers or skeptics are biased, leaving her exact influence a mystery like the smoke now blurring the battlefield's edges. A sudden cry pulls you back. Joan, struck by an arrow, stumbles but doesn't fall. The soldiers gasp, but she pulls the shaft from her shoulder, her face pale but set. Onward she shouts, raising her banner, and the men rally, their voices rising in a ragged cheer. You feel a surge of awe tempered by fear as blood stains her armor, yet she presses on. The historical record confirms this wound, noting Joan's return to battle the same day, May 7, 1429, as if her voices dulled the pain. Historians debate why she fought on divine strength or sheer will to prove her mission. Some see it as proof of her sanctity, others as stubborn courage, human and raw. You move along the wall, dodging a falling stone dislodged by a cannon's blast, its dust coating your tongue. The air carries the scent of burning pitch from a nearby fire, its heat a sharp contrast to the stone's chill. Joan's cross, that wooden pendant, sways as she moves, a callback to the forge in Tours, to the starlit courtyard in Chinon. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in a meadow, now standing in a storm of steel. A soldier, young and wide-eyed, clutches a rosary, whispering prayers as he watches Joan. "If she dies, we're lost," he mutters. You chuckle. Imagine a saint reassuring him. "Don't worry, she's tougher than your rosary beads." The battle shifts, the French gaining ground, their swords flashing as they breach the English lines. You hear the crunch of boots on broken wood, the screams of the wounded, and feel the wall shake again, its stones groaning. The historical record tells us the siege broke by May 8th, with the English abandoning their positions, a victory credited to Joan's presence. But how much was her doing? Some argue her banner inspired the final push. Others credit the commander's coordinated assaults. The debate lingers like the ash settling on your cloak, a faint weight of history's uncertainty. A bell tolls in Orleans, deep and resonant, not the off-key chime of Domremy's monk, but a reminder of it, tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell, a constant thread through her story. A bird that sparrow darts through the smoke, its wings a flicker of defiance. You grin, maybe it's her saint's scout dodging arrows to cheer her on. The world blurs, the battle's noise, the shouts, the steel fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the banner's soot-streaked glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a velvet whisper now, its silence cradling you softly, coaxing you toward dreams. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the radiant pull of a story that shines through time, then let me take you to Reims, to a grand cathedral in July 1429. A girl named Joan, not yet 17, kneels in sacred light, her banner lowered as a king is crowned. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a place where incense swirls and a peasant girl's dream takes root in stone. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too holy, too fleeting to fade into the dark. You stand in Reims Cathedral, its vast arches soaring above their stone carved with angels and saints who seem to watch from the shadows. The air is heavy with the sweet, smoky scent of incense, mingling with the faint musk of damp wool and the wax of countless candles flickering in golden holders. Your boots scuff the polished floor. Its tiles cool through the soles, and you feel the weight of the crowd, nobles in velvet, knights in polished armor, their murmurs a soft tide against the organ's deep hum. Stained glass windows glow with jewel-like light, casting red and blue patterns that dance across the stone, and you catch your breath, awed by the cathedral's ancient pulse. Joan kneels near the altar, her white armor dulled by travel, but still striking her banner resting beside her, its white cloth folded, its gold lilies catching the candlelight. Her face is quiet, almost serene, but you notice tears in her eyes glinting like the sacred oil being poured on Charles the Dauphin, now moments from becoming king. The archbishop, robed in gold, anoints Charles' brow, his voice echoing through the cathedral. "By the grace of God you are crowned," he intones, and the crowd erupts in cheers, their voices shaking the air. Joan bows her head, her hands still clean, impossibly so, clasped in prayer, and you smile. Imagine a saint wiping her tears, whispering, "Well done, girl." You step closer, weaving through the crowd, feeling the press of bodies and the faint heat of their breath. A noble nearby, his beard flecked with gray, mutters to a companion. "She brought him here, but what now?" his friend snorts. "Back to her sheep, I wager." You grin, imagine a saint shepherding Joan back to Domremy, herding her like one of her goats. The historical record tells us that on July 17, 1429, Charles VII was crowned in Reims, a triumph credited to Joan's victories at Orléans and along the Loire. Historians debate her motives here. Was she driven by divine duty to see Charles crowned, or did she seek political influence, a peasant girl tasting power? Some argue her tears were pure faith fulfilled. Others see ambition, a desire to shape France's future. The truth, like the incense curling upward, is elusive. You find a spot near a pillar, its stone cool against your shoulder, and watch as Joan rises, her armor clanking softly. The cathedral's light shifts a beam, catching her cross, that wooden pendant glinting faintly, a callback to the smoke-choked walls of Orléans, to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in starlight, now standing in a king's shadow. The air grows warmer, the candle's heat mingling with the crowd's restless energy, and you catch a whiff of lavender, faint but unmistakable, clinging to Joan's armor. A young page, his tunic rumpled, stares at her, whispering to a friend. She looks like a saint herself. You chuckle. Maybe her saints are blushing, embarrassed by the comparison. The historical debate about Joan's political role at Reims is sharp, like the organ's notes now swelling through the cathedral. Chronicles note her presence at the coronation, her banner visible, but her influence on Charles's court is unclear. Some historians argue she pushed for the coronation to unify France, her voices guiding her beyond Orléans. Others see her as a tool used by Charles's advisors to legitimize his claim, then sidelined. The records, sparse and biased, leave gaps like the shadows pooling in the cathedral's corners. You feel the ceremony's weight, the crowd's eyes on Joan, and wonder what she feels, triumph or the first stirrings of doubt. A sudden clatter breaks the reverence, a goblet knocked from a noble's hand, its wine splashing like blood on the tiles. Laughter ripples, easing the tension, and you grin. Imagine a saint tripping a noble to keep Joan humble. The archbishop continues, placing the crown on Charles's head, its jewels flashing, and the crowd cheers again, louder now. Joan steps back, her banner still, her face unreadable. The historical record tells us this moment was her pinnacle, the fulfillment of her mission to crown Charles. But why did she stay fighting on when her voice's task seemed done? Some historians argue her mission evolved, driven by a vision of a united France. Others see her caught in a role she couldn't escape. You move toward the altar, the floor's tiles slick underfoot, and feel the incense's sweetness catch in your throat. A bell tolls deep and resonant, not the off-key chime of Domremy's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. A bird that sparrow flits through an open window, its wings a soft flutter against the cathedral's vastness. You chuckle, maybe it's her saint scout reporting the coronation to heaven. The world blurs the cathedral's light, fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell that monk's clumsy tolling echoes, faintly pulling you back to her path. Let the incense's sweet drift carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You linger near the altar, the cathedral's vastness pressing around you, its air thick with the sweet haze of incense and the faint warmth of melting wax. The crowd's cheers fade to a low hum like a distant storm, and you feel the stone tiles underfoot, their coolness seeping through your boots. Your cloak is heavy, its wool catching the scent of smoke and lavender, a reminder of Joan standing just paces away. Her armor gleams softly in the candlelight, her banner now resting against a pillar, its white cloth folded but still radiant. Her tears are gone, but her eyes hold a quiet intensity, as if she's listening to voices only she can hear. The archbishop steps back, the coronation complete, and Charles rises, the crown heavy on his brow, his face a mix of awe and uncertainty. The nobles press closer, their velvet cloaks rustling, their jewels glinting like stars against the cathedral's glow. You notice a small detail, Joan's hands still clean despite the journey from Orleans are clasped tightly, her knuckles pale as if anchoring herself in this sacred moment. You smile. Imagine her saints polishing her fingers, ensuring she shines even in a king's shadow. A knight nearby, his armor scarred, leans toward a companion. "She got him here," he mutters, "but kings don't thank peasants." You grin. Imagine a saint drafting a thank-you note for Joan only for Charles to misplace it. The historical debate about Joan's motives at Reims grows sharper here, like the candlelight cutting through the incense. The chronicles of July 1429 describe her at the coronation, her banner a symbol of her victories, but her role in Charles's court is murky. Some historians argue she sought to shape France's future, urging Charles to reclaim Paris, her voices driving her beyond the crown. Others see her as a pawn, her presence orchestrated by advisors to bolster Charles's claim, only to be sidelined once the crown was secure. The records written by courtiers with their own agendas are vague, leaving her ambitions a mystery like the patterns shifting across the stained glass. A sudden gust from an open door stirs the air, sending a candle's flame dancing wildly. A page scrambles to shield it, his face flushed, and you chuckle. Imagine a saint playing with the wind, teasing the cathedral's solemnity. The crowd shifts, nobles murmuring about the march to Paris, their voices tinged with doubt. Joan turns her banner, catching the light, and you notice her cross that wooden pendant glinting faintly, a call back to the blood-soaked walls of Orleans, to the streamside shrine on the road. It's a thread weaving her story, tying her to the girl who knelt in a meadow, now standing in a cathedral's heart. You move through the crowd, the air warm with the press of bodies, and catch a faint scent of wine, sharp and sweet, lingering from the spilled goblet. A woman in silk whispers to a friend, "She'll want a title next, mark my words." Her friend laughs softly, "Or she'll burn for her boldness." You smile, perhaps they think her saints are woven into her very being, ambitious and untamed. The historical record notes that Joan stayed close to Charles's court after Reims pushing for action against the English. But why did she not return home, her mission seemingly complete? Some historians argue her voices gave her a new purpose to expel the enemy entirely. Others suggest she was trapped by her own fame, unable to return to obscurity. The cathedral's organ swells again, its notes rich and deep, vibrating through the stone. You feel the sound in your chest, a pulse that echoes the crowd's restless hope. Joan kneels once more, her head bowed, and you wonder what prayer she offers now, thanks or pleas for strength. The historical debate about her tears at the coronation lingers. Were they joy for Charles's triumph or sorrow for a mission she sensed was slipping from her grasp? Some chronicles call her radiant, others note a shadow in her eyes, hinting at her awareness of the court's fickleness. The truth, like the incense now settling on your shoulders, is a fragile veil. You pause near a side chapel, its altar glowing with candles, their light soft against the stone. A bell tolls deep and solemn, not the off-key chime of Domremi's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You think of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread, and smile faintly. A bird, that sparrow, flits across a window, its wings a quiet flutter against the cathedral's vastness. You chuckle. Maybe it's her saint's messenger carrying her prayers to God. The cathedral fades, its light and sound blending into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the incense's fading sweetness carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a quiet embrace now, its darkness soft as a whispered promise, nudging you toward dreams. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the fierce pulse of a story that burns through the shadows, then let me take you to a dusty road toward Paris in August 1429. A girl named Joan, not yet 17, marches with an army, her banner high, her heart set on a city that holds France's soul. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a camp where fires flicker and a peasant girl dares to chase a fading dream. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too bold, too bittersweet to slip away. You stand on a rutted road, the dust rising in clouds that cling to your boots, coating your cloak with a fine, gritty film. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of dry grass and the faint tang of sweat from the soldiers trudging beside you. Your throat is parched, the sun high and unyielding, its heat pressing against your skin like a weight. The camp sprawls to your left, a patchwork of tents and smoldering fires, their smoke curling lazily into the sky. The distant hum of voices, soldiers' curses, the clank of armor, the low whinny of horses blends with the buzz of cicadas, a restless rhythm that mirrors the army's unease. Joan rides ahead, her white armor dulled by dust, her banner raised its white cloth, fluttering its gold lilies, catching the sunlight. Her horse, a sturdy bay, kicks up clouds of dirt, and you notice her hand still clean, impossibly so, gripping the banner's pole with a quiet resolve. Soldiers watch her, their faces a mix of hope and weariness. Some cross themselves as she passes, others mutter doubts. A grizzled archer, his bow slung over his shoulder, leans toward a companion. "Paris is no Orleans," he grumbles. "She'll need more than a flag." You smile. Imagine a saint tossing extra banners into the fray, hoping they'll storm the city gates. You fall into step with the column, the dust stinging your eyes, the road's heat radiating through your boots. The historical record tells us that in August 1429, Joan led an army toward Paris, aiming to wrest the capital from English and Burgundian control after Charles's coronation at Reims. Historians debate her strategy here. Was she driven by her voices urging her to reclaim Paris, or by a court eager to exploit her fame? Some argue she acted with bold independence, believing Paris was her divine mission's next step. Others suggest Charles's advisers pushed her forward, then hesitated, wary of the city's defenses. The truth, like the dust now clouding the air, is hard to see through. A sudden laugh breaks the march's rhythm, a soldier tripping over a rock, his water flask spilling in a muddy arc. "Save it for the Parisians," a comrade shouts, and the men chuckle, their tension easing. Joan turns her smile quick, and you catch a flicker of warmth in her eyes, a spark of the girl who once teased her brother in Domremy. You grin, imagine a saint splashing water on the soldiers giggling from the heavens. The moment passes and the column presses on Paris's distant walls, a faint smudge on the horizon. You notice her cross, that wooden pendant swaying at her throat, a callback to the cathedral's glow and rhymes to the meadow where she knelt. It's a thread tying her to that girl even as she chases a city's heart. The road stretches on the sun, climbing higher, its heat relentless. You wipe sweat from your brow, the dust gritty on your skin, and smell the faint sweetness of wildflowers crushed underfoot. A soldier offers you a sip from his flask, its water warm but welcome, and mutters, "She's got fire, but Paris is a furnace." You nod, feeling the weight of his words, and watch Joan ride ahead, her banner steady despite the wind. The historical record notes that the assault on Paris began in early September 1429, but it faltered, a rare failure for Joan. Why did it fail? Some historians blame Charles's indecision, his court withholding troops. Others point to Paris's strong defenses, too formidable for her small force. The debate lingers like the smoke from a distant campfire. You pause by a gnarled tree, its shade a brief relief, and hear a soldier sing softly, his voice off-key, a faint echo of that monk's bell in Domremy. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his tolling a constant thread through Joan's story. A bird that sparrow flits across the road, its wings a flicker in the dust. You chuckle, maybe it's her saint scout checking her path to Paris. The world blurs, the march's noise, the clank of armor, the soldiers' murmurs fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the banner's dusty glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You press on the road to Paris, growing harder, its dust now mixed with gravel that crunches underfoot, each step kicking up clouds that settle on your cloak like a second skin. The sun beats down its heat, a relentless pulse, and the air carries the sharp scent of sweat and leather tinged with the faint sweetness of bruised grass along the path. Your throat burns parched despite the water you sipped, and you feel the march's weight in your aching legs, the rhythm of the army's steps, a steady drumbeat. The camp is far behind, but its smoke still lingers in the sky, a faint haze blending with the horizon where Paris waits its walls, a distant promise or threat. Joan rides at the column's head, her banner a white flame against the dust, her armor dulled but unbowed, as if the sun itself respects her resolve. Her hands still clean despite the road's filth, grip the banner's pole and you smile. Imagine her saints dusting her fingers with every step, a divine chore for her heavenly retinue. The soldiers march in ragged lines, their faces etched with fatigue, their armor clinking softly. A young pikeman, his helmet slipping, mutters to a friend, "She got us Orleans, but Paris. That's a different beast." His friend snorts, wiping dust from his eyes. "Beast with walls thicker than my skull." You grin, imagine a saint sizing up Paris's gates with a celestial hammer, shaking their head in dismay. The historical debate about Joan's Paris campaign is a knot of ambition and betrayal. The chronicles of September 1429 describe her leading an assault on the city's walls, but the effort collapsed, wounding her and breaking her streak of victories. Some historians argue she overestimated her divine mandate, pushing for Paris against Charles's wavering support, her voices urging her on. Others blame the court's politics. Charles, fresh from his coronation, feared her growing fame and sent half-hearted reinforcements, dooming her attack. The records are thin with Joan's own words, scarce leaving scholars to parse biased accounts from courtiers who either adored or despised her. The truth, like the dust now stinging your eyes, is gritty and hard to pin. A sudden jolt halts the column, a cart's wheel stuck in a rut, its driver cursing as he tugs at the reins. Soldiers laugh, one shouting, "Tell Joan to pray it free." The jest ripples through the ranks, and Joan turns her smile faint but sharp. "Pray for your own feet first," she calls back, and you laugh. Imagine her saints chuckling, nudging the cart just to spark her wit. The moment eases the march's strain, but the air grows heavier, the scent of dust now mixed with the distant tang of river water, a hint of the Seine near Paris's walls. You notice her cross that wooden pendant glinting as she moves a callback to the cathedral's incense in rhymes to the forge's heat in Tours. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in starlight, now marching toward a city that might break her. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow, and lean against a low stone wall, its surface warm from the sun. The road stretches on Paris, clearer now, its towers rising like a challenge. A soldier older with a limp from Orleans says to no one, "She's got heart, but heart don't breach stone." Joan's banner waves ahead, and you feel its pull, a symbol of hope in a campaign faltering. The historical record notes that Joan's attack on Paris September 8, 1429, ended in retreat, her wound a crossbow bolt to the thigh forcing her back. Why did she fail? Some argue her voices misjudged the city's strength. Others see Charles's hesitation, his treaty talks with the Burgundians undermining her. The debate swirls like the dust settling over the road, a veil over her intentions. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows, and you hear a faint song from the rear off-key, and ragged a soldier's echo of that Domremy monk's bell. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk is tolling a constant thread through Joan's story. A bird, that sparrow, darts across the path, its wings a flicker in the fading light. You chuckle, maybe it's her saint's scout warning her of Paris's walls. The world blurs the march's sounds, the clank of armor, the soldiers' curses fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling echoes faintly pulling you back to her path. Let the banner's dust-choked glow carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still with me, aren't you? The night is a quiet veil now, its darkness soft as a fading echo drawing you toward sleep. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the fierce heartbeat of a story that refuses to dim, then let me take you to Compiègne, to a muddy battlefield in May 1430. A girl named Joan, now 17, fights against mounting odds, her banner faltering in a trap that tightens like a noose. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a place where courage meets betrayal, where a peasant girl's light begins to flicker. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too raw, too heavy to fade into the dark. You stand on the outskirts of Compiègne, the ground slick with spring mud, its chill seeping through your boots. The air is sharp, heavy with the scent of damp earth and the acrid tang of smoke from distant fires. Your cloak is sodden, clinging to your shoulders, and you feel the bite of a cold wind carrying the faint metallic clink of armor and the low shouts of men locked in battle. The sky is overcast, its clouds low and brooding, casting a dull light over the chaos, a skirmish unfolding beyond the town's walls where French troops clash with Burgundian forces. Arrows hiss through the air, their sharp whine a deadly counterpoint to the thud of hooves and the clash of steel. Joan is there near the heart of the fight, her white armor scarred and mud-streaked, her banner raised but sagging in the wind, its white cloth torn, its gold lilies dulled by grime. Her horse rears its breath steaming, and you notice her hands still clean impossibly so, gripping the banner's pole with a desperate strength. She shouts, her voice hoarse but clear, urging her men to hold the line. For France she cries, but the soldiers falter, their ranks thinning under a Burgundian onslaught. A French archer, his face pale, mutters to a companion, "She's pushing too far, we're exposed." You smile faintly, imagine a saint whispering, "Hold fast, Joan," while juggling arrows in the clouds. You duck behind a low ditch, the mud squelching under your knees, and watch as Joan rides through the fray, her banner a faint beacon in the battle's haze. The historical record tells us that on May 23, 1430, Joan led a sortie from Compiègne to harass Burgundian troops, a bold but risky move. Historians debate her decision. Was it a desperate bid to protect a loyal town guided by her voices, or a reckless act driven by a need to reclaim her fading glory after Paris? Some argue she acted alone, her small force unsupported by Charles's court. Others suggest a trap laid by Burgundian spies who knew her movements. The truth, like the mud now coating your hands, is slippery and unclear. A sudden cry pierces the chaos. Joan's horse stumbles, and she's pulled from the saddle, her banner falling into the mud. Burgundian soldiers close in their shouts, triumphant, and you feel your heart lurch as she struggles, her armor clanking. "To me," she calls, but her men are scattered, some fleeing toward Compiègne's gates, which begin to close. You flinch, the scene raw, and notice a soldier nearby, his sword dropped, staring in shock. "She's done for," he mutters, and you grin weakly. Imagine a saint scrambling to lift her halo, slipping in the panic. The historical record confirms her capture that day, betrayed by the raised drawbridge that cut off her retreat. Why was she abandoned? Some historians blame cowardice or miscommunication. Others see treachery, perhaps orchestrated by Charles's court, wary of her influence. You crawl along the ditch, the mud cold against your skin, the air thick with the stench of blood and burning wood from a nearby barricade. Joan's cross, that wooden pendant, catches a fleeting ray of light as she's dragged away, a callback to the dusty road to Paris, to the cathedral's glow in rhymes. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in a meadow, now a prisoner in a muddy field. The battle fades, the French retreating, the Burgundians cheering as they bind Joan's hands. You feel the weight of her capture, a turning point that shifts the war's tide. Historians debate Charles's inaction. Did he abandon her out of fear, or was he powerless, his court fractured? The records are silent on his motives, leaving only speculation like the smoke curling over the battlefield. A soldier, wounded and limping, pauses near you, his breath ragged. "She fought like a lion," he says, "but lions don't outrun nets." You nod, the words heavy, and notice a small bird, that sparrow, perched on a broken fence, its eyes bright despite the chaos. You chuckle faintly, maybe it's her saint scout watching helplessly as their champion falls. A bell tolls in Compiègne, deep and mournful, not the off-key chime of Domrémy's monk, but a reminder of it, tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. The world blurs, the battlefield's noise, the shouts, the steel, fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the mud's cold grip carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You remain in the ditch, the mud clinging to your knees, its cold seeping into your bones as the battle's din softens, replaced by the low moans of the wounded and the distant cheers of Burgundian victors. The air grows heavier, the smoke from burning barricades mixing with the damp scent of earth and the sharp tang of spilled blood. Your cloak is sodden, its wool heavy with mud, and you wipe your hands on it, leaving smears that blend with the dust from the road to Paris. The sky stays gray, its clouds pressing low, and you feel the battlefield's weight, a suffocating stillness where Joan's banner once flew. She's gone now, dragged beyond the field, her white armor glinting faintly as Burgundian soldiers lead her toward their camp. You catch a last glimpse of her cross, that wooden pendant swaying against her chest, a call back to the blood-soaked walls of Orléans, to the starlit meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying her to the girl who spoke to saints, now bound and silenced, her banner left trampled in the mud. You crawl from the ditch, your boots slipping, and stand on the edge of the battlefield, the ground scarred with hoof prints and broken weapons. A French soldier, his arm bloodied, stumbles past, muttering. They shut the gate on her. You nod the betrayal sharp and smile faintly. Imagine a saint cursing the gatekeeper, shaking a fist from the heavens. The historical debate about Joan's capture at Compiègne is a tangle of loyalty and treachery. The chronicles of May 23, 1430 describe her leading a small force to defend the town, only to be cut off when Compiègne's drawbridge rose, trapping her outside. Some historians argue the betrayal was deliberate, orchestrated by Charles's court or local allies who feared her influence or sought favor with the Burgundians. Others suggest it was chaos, a panicked misjudgment in the heat of battle. The records are vague, with no clear culprit named, leaving scholars to sift through rumors and silences. Why did Charles not ransom her as was custom for captured leaders? Some see his inaction as cowardice, others as pragmatism, his treasury drained and his court divided. The truth, like the mud now drying on your hands, is stubborn and unclear. A sudden clatter breaks the quiet. A dropped shield kicked by a scavenging dog sniffing through the wreckage. The animal bolts and a nearby soldier laughs a hollow sound. Even the dogs know we're lost without her, he says, and you chuckle weakly. Imagine a saint recruiting that dog to dig up Joan's banner tail, wagging with divine purpose. The battlefield grows still, the Burgundians retreating with their prize, the French slinking back to Compiègne's walls. You notice a faint scent of wild mint crushed underfoot, a strange sweetness amid the carnage, and it reminds you of the meadow where Joan once prayed a lifetime ago. You move across the field, stepping over broken arrows, the ground soft and uneven. A wounded man calls for water, his voice faint, and you pause, wishing you had a flask to offer. Joan's absence feels like a wound itself, her fire snuffed out in a moment. The historical record tells us she was sold to the English by the Burgundians, her capture a political coup for their allies. But why Compiègne? Some historians argue she was drawn there by loyalty, the town, a French stronghold she couldn't abandon. Others see her chasing glory, hoping to reclaim the momentum lost at Paris. The debate lingers like the smoke still drifting over the field, obscuring her motives. A bell tolls again, deep and somber, its echo rolling from Compiègne's walls. It's not the off-key chime of Domrémy's monk, but you hear that clumsy tolling in your mind, a constant thread through Joan's story. You smile, thinking of that monk, his bell tying you to her world. A bird, that sparrow, perches on a shattered lance, its eyes bright, unmoved by the battle's toll. You chuckle faintly, maybe it's her saint's scout mourning her fall but refusing to flee. The world blurs, the battlefield sounds, the moans, the wind fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the mud's fading chill carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a quiet shroud now, its darkness wrapping you, gently whispering of sleep. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the searing pulse of a story that refuses to fade, then let me take you to Rouen, to a grim chamber in February 1431. A girl named Joan, just 17, stands before a tribunal, her voice steady in a web of accusations and lies. Lie back, let the world blur and come with me to a place where faith battles fear, where a peasant girl's light burns against the shadow of judgment. Don't drift off yet. This tale is too sharp, too haunting to slip into the dark. You stand in a stone chamber in Rouen Castle, its walls damp and cold, the air heavy with the musty scent of mildew and the faint smoke of tallow candles flickering on a long table. Your boots scuff the uneven floor, gritty with dust, and you feel a chill seep through your cloak, its wool thin against the winter's bite. Narrow windows barred and high let in slivers of gray light barely cutting through the gloom. The room is crowded with clerics and judges, their robes rustling, their faces stern under heavy hoods. Quills scratch on parchment, a relentless drone as they record every word, every breath of the girl at the center of their gaze. Joan stands before them, her hands bound with rough rope, her boyish clothes, tunic and hose worn but clean, a defiance of the cell's filth. Her hair cropped short frames a face pale from months in chains, yet her eyes burn with a quiet fire. Bishop Cochon, the trial's master, leans forward, his voice smooth but venomous. "You claim God speaks to you, Jeanne," he says, using her French name. "Confess your heresy or face God's judgment." Joan lifts her chin, her voice clear. "My voices are from God, and I've done his will." You smile faintly, imagine a saint whispering her lines, coaching her through this deadly game. You find a spot against the wall, the stone icy under your shoulder, and watch as Joan faces the tribunal, her presence a spark in the chamber's gloom. The historical record tells us that in February 1431, Joan's trial began in Rouen, an English stronghold orchestrated by pro-English clerics to discredit her and Charles's crown. Historians debate the trial's fairness. Was it a legitimate inquiry into heresy or a political sham to eliminate a threat? Some argue Cochon, backed by English gold, rigged the outcome from the start. Others note the cleric's genuine fear of her claims, seeing her voices as demonic. The truth, like the candlelight wavering on the table, is frail and shifting. A cleric coughs, the sound harsh, and adjusts his papers, their edges yellowed. "Your voices told you to wear men's clothes," he says, his tone accusing. "Is that not sin?" Joan's answer is swift. "I wore them to do God's work, not to defy him." The room stirs murmurs rippling, and you grin. Imagine St. Michael defending her wardrobe, arguing fashion with a haloed shrug. The judges press harder, their questions a barrage, her visions, her battles, her refusal to submit. Joan parries each, her words simple but sharp, and you feel the chamber's tension, a tightening noose around her truth. You notice her cross that wooden pendant half hidden under her tunic, a callback to the muddy field at Compiègne, to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in starlight, now standing in chains. The air grows stale, the candle's smoke stinging your eyes, and you catch a faint scent of damp straw, perhaps from Joan's cell below. A young scribe, his fingers inked, glances at her with pity, then quickly looks down as if fearing his own thoughts. You smile, maybe he's imagining her saints taking notes, their quills scratching in heavenly protest. The historical debate about the trial's motives is fierce, like the wind you hear howling outside. The records preserved in detailed transcripts show Joan's defiance, but the judge's bias is clear. Her guilt was assumed before she spoke. Why such a spectacle? Some historians argue it was to destroy her myth, proving her a fraud to France and England. Others see it as a warning to Charles, a reminder of English power. The trial's outcome, they note, was inevitable, yet Joan's answers, recorded verbatim, reveal a mind unshaken by fear. You feel the room's weight, the judge's eyes boring into her, searching for a crack in her resolve. A sudden clatter, a dropped quill rolling across the table, breaks the silence. A cleric mutters and the others chuckle, easing the strain. You grin. Imagine a saint flicking the quill, giving Joan a moment to breathe. Cochon's voice cuts through, relentless. Recant Jean, or the fire awaits. Joan's reply is soft but firm. I'd rather die than deny God's truth. You nod her courage, a quiet ache in your chest. The world pauses, the chamber's gloom fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell that monks chant tolling from Domremy echoes faintly, pulling you to her story. Let the candle's faltering light carry you forward to another moment in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You remain in the chamber, the air growing colder, the damp stone walls seeming to close in as the trial's rhythm grinds on, relentless. The candles burn low, their wax pooling on the table, and the smoke curls upward, curling, stinging your throat, mingling with the faint, sour tang of sweat and fear in the crowded room. Your cloak is heavy damp from the castle's chill, and you shift your weight, feeling the gritty floor beneath your boots, its grit catching at the soles. The cleric's quills continue their scratching, a sound like insects in the dark, recording every word with a precision that feels like a betrayal of Joan's simple faith. The judges' voices drone, a relentless tide, their questions weaving a net tighter around her spirit. Joan stands unbowed, her bound hands clasped her tunic, still clean despite the cell's filth, a quiet act of defiance against her captors. Her face is drawn months in chains, etching shadows under her eyes, but her voice remains steady, cutting through the chamber like a blade through fog. My voices spoke true, she says, answering a question about her banner. They led me to save France. Bishop Cochon's eyes narrow, his fingers drumming on the table, and he leans forward. And if they were demons, Jean, will you still cling to them? She meets his gaze unflinching. They are gods, and I fear no man's judgment. You smile faintly. Imagine St. Catherine rolling her eyes at Cochon, muttering, "Try harder, Bishop." The historical debate about Joan's trial at Rouen is a storm of politics and faith. The transcripts, meticulously kept from February to May 1431, show a girl outwitting learned clerics with simple truths, but the trial's purpose was never justice. Some historians argue it was a propaganda tool designed to crush Joan's legend and weaken Charles's claim to the throne. Others see a clash of worldviews, medieval churchmen fearing a woman who claimed direct divine guidance, bypassing their authority. Why did the English fund it? Through Cochon's Burgundian ties, some say to avenge their losses at Orléans, others to deter French resistance. The truth, like the candlelight now flickering, is fragile, casting more shadows than it dispels. You move closer, the chamber's chill seeping deeper, and catch a faint whiff of damp straw, a reminder of Joan's cell where she's kept in chains, guarded by rough English soldiers. Her cross, that wooden pendant, peeks from her tunic, glinting faintly, a callback to the muddy battlefield at Compiègne, to the forge's heat in Tours. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in a meadow, now facing a tribunal bent on her destruction. A cleric younger than the rest shifts uncomfortably his quill, pausing as Joan speaks of her saints. They come in light, she says, and their voices are soft like a friend's. You grin, imagine St. Margaret gossiping with Joan, sharing heavenly tea between visions. The trial's questions turn sharper, probing her refusal to wear women's clothes, her claim to divine missions. You led men to war, a judge snaps. Is that a woman's place? Joan's reply is quick. God chose me, not man's rules. The room stirs, some clerics nodding, others scowling, and you feel the air shift, a fleeting crack in their certainty. The historical record notes her eloquence, her answers confounding men trained in theology. Why did she hold firm? Some historians argue her faith was absolute, her voice is a shield against doubt. Others see a calculated defiance, a refusal to let her enemies win, even in chains. The debate lingers like the smoke now pooling in the rafters. A sudden noise, a chair scraping as a cleric rises his robes, catching a candle's flame. He smothers it quickly, cursing under his breath, and the others laugh a brief release in the chamber's gloom. You chuckle. Imagine a saint flicking the flame, teasing the cleric's solemnity. Joan's face softens for a moment, a flicker of the girl who laughed at soldiers' jests. The judges resume relentless, and you notice a small bird, that sparrow, perched on a high ledge, its eyes bright in the dim light. You smile faintly, maybe it's her saint scout watching her stand unbowed. The chamber fades its sounds, the quills, the murmurs blending into a dreamlike hum. A bell tolls outside deep and heavy, not the off-key chime of Domremi's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You think of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread, and feel the trial's weight a noose tightening around her light. The world blurs, the candlelight dimming, and that off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes, faintly pulling you back to her path. Let the chamber's fading gloom carry you forward to another moment, another step in Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a heavy curtain now, its silence deep and solemn, urging you toward rest. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the piercing glow of a story that refuses to fade, then let me take you to Rouen old market square on May 30th, 1431. A girl named Joan, just 17, faces her final moment, her faith aflame against the gathering dark. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a place where courage meets cruelty, where a peasant girl's light burns eternal. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too searing, too sacred to slip away. You stand in Rouen's crowded square, the cobblestones uneven under your boots, their damp chill seeping through the soles. The air is thick with the acrid scent of burning pitch, and the sour tang of sweat from the pressing crowd, townsfolk, soldiers, clerics, their faces a mix of fear, pity, and grim resolve. Your cloak is heavy brushed by the elbows of those around you, and you feel the weight of their murmurs, a low hum like a storm brewing. A wooden stake rises from a pyre at the square's center, its logs stacked high, glistening with oil. Above, the sky is gray, heavy with clouds, as if heaven itself mourns what's to come. Joan is led forward, her hands bound her boyish clothes, replaced with a simple gray shift, its hem frayed but clean, a final act of defiance against her fate. Her hair cropped short frames, a face pale from months in chains, but her eyes are steady bright with a fire no prison could dim. She clutches a small cross fashioned from twigs by a sympathetic soldier, its rough edges pressed against her chest. You notice it's a new cross, not the wooden pendant of her youth, yet it echoes that lost token, a call back to the trial's cold chamber, to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying her to the girl who knelt in starlight, now facing a pyre in Rouen's heart. A cleric, his robe stiff with embroidery, reads the sentence, his voice sharp. Jean called the maid, "You are guilty of heresy and witchcraft. You are given to the fire." Joan doesn't flinch, her gaze fixed on the cross, and she speaks, her voice clear despite the crowd's din. "I die true to God and my voices." A soldier nearby, his face weathered, mutters to a companion, "She's braver than us all." You smile faintly, imagine a saint whispering courage to Joan, fanning her heart's flame against the pyre's hunger. You press closer, the crowd's heat stifling the air, now sharp with the scent of kindling and fear. The historical record tells us that on May 30th, 1431, Joan was burned at the stake in Rouen, a public execution meant to crush her legend and France's hope. Historians debate the trial's aftermath. Was her death a triumph for the English or a spark that fueled French resistance? Some argue her martyrdom galvanized Charles's cause, leading to France's eventual victory. Others see it as a hollow victory for her enemies, her legacy enduring beyond the flames. The truth, like the smoke now rising as the pyre is lit, is elusive, curling into the sky. The flames catch their crackle, a cruel song, and you feel your chest tighten as Joan prays aloud, her voice steady. "Jesus," she cries again and again, a plea or a proclamation cutting through the crowd's gasps. A woman near you weeps, clutching a rosary, and mutters, "She's no witch." You nod and grin faintly, imagine Saint Michael dousing the flames with a celestial bucket, only to sigh at God's plan. The historical record notes her final moments, her calls to Jesus recorded by witnesses, some of whom wept, others hardened. Why did some pity her now? Some historians argue her courage shamed the crowd. Others see political shifts, with French loyalties turning against the English. You step back, the heat of the pyre stinging your face, the air thick with ash and sorrow. Joan's cross, that twig-made token, is held high, a fragile shield against the flames. The crowd grows quiet, their murmurs fading, and you hear a bell toll in the distance, deep and mournful, not the off-key chime of Domrémy's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. A bird, that sparrow, flits above the square, its wings a flicker against the smoke. You chuckle faintly, maybe it's her saint scout carrying her soul to heaven. The world blurs the square's noise, the flames, the crowd fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the fire's fading glow carry you forward to the end of Joan's fierce, fleeting journey. You stay rooted in the square, the pyre's heat now a fierce wall, its flames licking higher, their roar drowning out the crowd's murmurs. The air chokes with smoke, thick and bitter, stinging your eyes and clogging your throat, mingling with the sharp scent of burning oil and the faint, sickly sweetness of charred wood. Your cloak is dusted with ash, its wool heavy against your shoulders, and you feel the cobblestones uneven bite underfoot, grounding you in this moment of horror and awe. The crowd presses closer, their faces a blur of grief, fear and grim fascination, their breaths fogging in the cold spring air. A child clings to his mother's skirt, whispering, "Is she really a witch?" And you shake your head silent as Joan's voice rises again, Jesus, a cry that pierces the flames. Joan stands at the stake, her gray shift catching sparks, her twig cross clutched tightly, its rough edges digging into her palms. Her face, though pale, holds a calm that defies the fire, her eyes fixed on some unseen light beyond the smoke. The flames climb their heat, warping the air, and you notice her lips moving, perhaps in prayer, perhaps speaking to her saints. You smile faintly. Imagine St. Catherine fanning the smoke away, whispering, "Hold fast, Joan, we're here." The crowd's silence deepens, broken only by sobs and the crackle of the pyre, and you feel a pang, her courage, a weight in your chest heavier than the ash settling around you. The historical debate about Joan's execution is a crucible of politics and faith. The records of May 30th, 1431, detail her death witnessed by hundreds, her cries of Jesus etched into chronicles. Some historians argue her execution backfired, her martyrdom fueling French resistance and tarnishing English rule. Others see it as a calculated act meant to erase her influence and cow her followers, though it failed to quench her legend. Why did the English allow such a public spectacle? Some suggest they needed to prove her mortal, not divine. Others argue internal pressures like Burgundian demands forced their hand. The truth, like the flames now consuming the pyre, is fierce and untamed, leaving only embers of certainty. A sudden gust scatters ash across the square, and a cleric flinches his robe, catching a spark. He brushes it off, muttering, and the crowd stirs a ripple of nervous laughter, breaking the tension. You chuckle faintly, imagine a saint tossing sparks for mischief, lightening Joan's final moments. The flames surge, and Joan's voice falters, her cries softer now, yet still clear. A soldier, his face streaked with soot, turns away, whispering, "God forgive us." You nod, feeling the crowd shame, a collective weight as the fire claims her. The historical record notes that some English soldiers wept, struck by her dignity. Others, hardened, saw only a heretic burned. Why such divided reactions? Some historians point to her charisma even in death. Others to shifting allegiances with France's cause gaining ground. You step back, the heat overwhelming the air, now thick with the stench of burning cloth and flesh, a smell that turns your stomach. The pyre's flames cast shadows that dance across the cobblestones, twisting like spirits, and you notice a small detail, Joan's twig cross still held high, its wood unburned amid the blaze, a fleeting miracle or trick of the eye. The historical record tells us her ashes were scattered in the sand to prevent relics, but her legacy endured, her story spreading like wildfire. Why did she inspire such devotion? Some argue her faith resonated with a war-torn people. Others see her as a symbol shaped by France's need for hope. The crowd begins to disperse, some weeping, others silent as the pyre collapses into embers. You hear that bell again, deep and mournful, tolling from Rouen cathedral, not the off-key chime of Dom Remy's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You smile, thinking of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread through her story. A bird that sparrow circles above the square, its wings a quiet defiance against the smoke. You chuckle faintly, maybe it's her saint scout guiding her soul beyond the flames. The world blurs the square's heat and sorrow, fading into a dreamlike hum. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, echoes faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the ember's dying glow carry you forward to the end of Joan's fierce, fleeting journey and into her eternal light. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a gentle tide now, its darkness ebbing softly, inviting you to dream. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the lingering glow of a story that burns beyond the flames, then let me take you to the years after Rouen, to a France where Joan's name whispers through time in 1456 and beyond. Her ashes are scattered, but her light endures, a spark in the hearts of those who remember. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a quiet courtroom and a village meadow where a peasant girl's legacy is reborn. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too enduring, too radiant to fade into the dark. You stand in a modest courtroom in Paris, its wooden walls worn smooth by years of pleas and judgments, the air carrying the faint scent of old parchment and polished oak. It's June 1456, 25 years since the fire at Rouen, and sunlight streams through a high window, dust motes swirling like memories. Your boots creak on the floorboards, their polish catching the light, and you feel the weight of a small crowd, clerics, scribes, and villagers from Dom Remy, their faces lined with hope and sorrow. A table holds stacks of documents, yellowed trial records from Rouen, their ink faded but heavy with the weight of a wrong undone. A bishop, his robe simple, speaks softly, his voice steady. We gather to restore Jean's name, to declare her innocence. You smile faintly, imagining Joan's saints nodding approval, their halos glowing brighter in some heavenly gallery. A woman nearby, her hair grayed, clutches a rosary and whispers, "She was no heretic, my sister knew her." Her voice trembles and you nod. Imagine a saint whispering back, we knew her too. The historical record tells us that in 1456, a rehabilitation trial ordered by Charles VII cleared Joan of heresy, overturning the Rouen verdict. Historians debate its motives. Was it Charles's gratitude, securing his crown's legitimacy, or political necessity as France rallied against English rule? Some argue it was a moral reckoning, others a strategic move to unify a fractured nation. The truth, like the sunlight filtering through the window, is warm but elusive. You find a seat on a wooden bench, its surface cool, and watch as a scribe reads from the old transcripts, Joan's words echoing, "My voices were from God." A villager from Domremy, his hands calloused, testifies, his voice rough. She was pious, always at the church, always kind. You notice a small cross on the table, carved from wood, not Joan's, but a reminder of her twig cross in Rouen, a callback to the battlefield at Compiègne, to the meadow where she prayed. It's a thread tying this moment to the girl who changed France, her legacy, now a flame rekindled. The air grows warmer, the room's quiet, broken by the soft scratch of quills recording this new verdict. A young cleric, his eyes bright, leans toward a companion. "She's a saint to them already," he whispers, nodding at the villagers. You grin, imagine St. Michael chuckling, "Took them long enough." The historical debate about Joan's rehabilitation centers on its impact. Did it reshape France's identity, or merely affirm what many already believed? Some historians argue it inspired the final push to expel the English by 1453. Others see it as symbolic, a gesture to heal old wounds. The records, detailed but selective, leave room for speculation, like the dust now settling on the table. A sudden clatter, a dropped book, its pages fluttering, breaks the silence. A scribe scrambles to retrieve it, and the crowd laughs softly, easing the room's weight. You chuckle. Imagine a saint nudging the book, reminding everyone to stay humble. The bishop continues, declaring Joan's trial null, her name restored, and you feel a quiet triumph, as if her light burns anew. The world pauses, the courtroom's glow fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling from Domremy, echoes faintly, pulling you to her story. Let the sunlight's gentle warmth carry you forward to another moment in Joan's eternal legacy. You linger in the courtroom, the sunlight now softer, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, its grain worn smooth by countless steps. The air carries a faint sweetness from the open window, where a breeze stirs, mingling with the musty scent of old parchment and the wax of candles lit for the occasion. Your cloak brushes the bench, its wool catching the faint dust of the room, and you feel the weight of this moment, a reckoning not just for Joan, but for a nation scarred by war and division. The crowd's murmurs fade to a hush, their eyes fixed on the bishop as he closes the proceedings, his voice solemn. Jeanne d'Arc is innocent, her name restored to honor. You smile, imagining Joan's saints clapping in some celestial assembly, their cheers echoing through the heavens. A villager from Domremy, her face etched with years of toil, wipes a tear and whispers to her neighbor. She'd have smiled to hear this. The neighbor nods, his hands gripping a worn cap. "Aye, and told us to get back to work." You chuckle faintly. Imagine Joan, haloed and impatient, shooing her saints to tend France's fields. The historical debate about the 1456 rehabilitation trials swirls like the dust motes in the sunlight. Some historians argue it was Charles VII's belated gratitude ensuring his crown's legitimacy by clearing the woman who secured it. Others see a calculated act, as France, now stronger, sought to erase the stain of English propaganda. Why wait 25 years? Some point to political timing, with the 100 Years' War nearing its end. Others suggest Charles's earlier silence was shame only overcome by public demand. The truth, like the papers now being sealed, is layered and complex. You rise from the bench, its wood creaking, and move toward the window, feeling the breeze's cool touch on your face. Outside, Paris hums with life cartwheels, rattling voices calling in the market, a city Joan never conquered, but whose spirit she shaped. You notice a small wooden cross on the table, its edges smooth, not Joan's, but a symbol of her tying this moment to the twig cross she clutched in Rouen, to the pendant she wore in battle. It's a thread weaving her legacy from a meadow in Domremy to this courtroom's quiet justice. A young woman, perhaps a scribe's daughter, touches the cross lightly, her eyes distant. They sing of her in the villages, she says softly, and you nod her songs you think are her new banner carried by voices across France. The historical record tells us the rehabilitation trial was a triumph, with witnesses from Domremy to Orléans testifying to Joan's piety and courage. Her mother, Isabelle Romay, pleaded for the trial, her grief a catalyst for justice. But what did it achieve? Some historians argue it unified France, her name a rallying cry as the English were driven out by 1453. Others see it as a symbolic gesture, her legend already rooted in the people's hearts, needing no court to affirm it. The debate lingers like the scent of wax now fading as the candles burn low. You catch a whiff of lavender from the breeze, a faint echo of the scent that clung to Joan's armor, and it pulls you back to her world, to the battles and prayers that shaped her. A sudden laugh breaks the room's quiet, a child chasing a stray cat that's darted under the table, its tail flicking past the trial records. The crowd chuckles and the bishop smiles, a rare warmth in his face. You grin, imagine a saint sending that cat to lighten the mood, a playful nod to Joan's love of simple things. The proceedings end, the crowd dispersing, and you step outside, the cobblestones warm underfoot, the air fresh with the promise of rain. A bell tolls in the distance, deep and clear, not the off-key chime of Domremy's monk, but a reminder of it, tying you to Joan's story. You think of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread, and smile faintly. You pause in the street, watching a sparrow flit across the sky, its wings a flicker against the clouds. You chuckle. Maybe it's her saint's scout still carrying her light to the heavens. The courtroom fades, its echoes blending into a dreamlike hum, and you feel Joan's presence not in the fire, but in the songs, the crosses, the stories that endure. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling, hums faintly, pulling you back to her path. Let the sunlight's fading warmth carry you forward to the eternal echo of Joan's fierce, fleeting journey, now a flame that never dies. You're still here, aren't you? The night is a quiet river now, its darkness flowing softly, carrying you toward dreams. But if you're still awake, if you're caught in the radiant echo of a story that lingers like starlight, then let me take you to the centuries after Joan's fire, to a world where her name becomes a prayer, a banner, a saint's halo. It's 1920, and her spirit stirs in a grand basilica and a humble village meadow. Lie back, let the world blur, and come with me to a place where a peasant girl's light is crowned eternal. Don't drift off yet, this tale is too timeless, too luminous to fade into the dark. You stand in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, its marble vastness soaring above the air, rich with the scent of incense and polished stone. It's May 16th, 1920, and sunlight streams through high windows, glinting off golden mosaics that shimmer like heaven's own tapestry. Your boots echo on the polished floor, cool and smooth, and you feel the weight of a gathered crowd, cardinals in scarlet, pilgrims in simple cloth, their murmurs a soft hymn of awe. A portrait of Joan hangs near the altar, her armor gleaming, her banner raised, her eyes fixed on some divine horizon. Pope Benedict XV speaks, his voice resonant. Jeanne d'Arc is a saint, her name forever blessed. You smile faintly, imagining Joan's saints cheering, their halos bouncing in a celestial dance. A French pilgrim, her face weathered, clutches a small cross and whispers, "She's ours, but now she's everyone's." You nod. Imagine Joan bemused, asking her saints why they took so long to get her a halo. The historical record tells us that in 1920, Joan was canonized by the Catholic Church, her sanctity affirmed after centuries of devotion. Historians debate the canonization's timing. Was it a spiritual recognition of her faith, or a political act with France seeking unity after World War I? Some argue it was both, her legend a bridge between church and nation. Others see it as a nod to popular piety, her sainthood already alive in folk prayers. The truth, like the incense curling through the basilica, is layered and fragrant. You find a spot near a marble column, its cool surface grounding you, and watch as the ceremony unfolds, candles flickering like stars on the altar. A wooden cross, simple and worn, rests among the offerings, not Joan's, but a reminder of her twig cross in Rouen, a callback to the rehabilitation trial in Paris, to the meadow in Domremy. It's a thread tying this moment to the girl who changed a nation, her legacy now a universal flame. A young priest, his eyes bright, whispers to a companion, "She's a saint for soldiers and dreamers." You grin, imagine Saint Michael nodding proud to share his celestial rank with her. The air grows warmer, the crowd's prayers rising, and you catch a faint scent of lavender carried perhaps by a pilgrim shawl, echoing the fragrance that clung to Joan's armor. The historical debate about her canonization swirls like the candlelight. Why 1920? Some historians point to France's post-war need for heroes, Joan's image rallying a wounded nation. Others note the Church's slow process, her 1909 beatification paving the way after decades of petitions. The records show her miracles, healings attributed to her intercession, but skeptics argue these were shaped to fit canonization's needs. You feel the basilica's pulse, a heartbeat of faith and history, and wonder how Joan's story grew from a pyre to this sacred hall. A sudden rustle, a dropped prayer book, its pages fluttering, breaks the silence. A child giggles and the crowd smiles, a moment of lightness in the solemn rite. You chuckle. Imagine a saint nudging the book, keeping the pilgrims humble. The Pope continues proclaiming Joan's virtues, and you feel her presence not in the fire, but in the light that fills this place. The world pauses, the basilica's glow fading into a dreamlike haze. That off-key bell, that monk's clumsy tolling from Domremy echoes, faintly pulling you to her story. Let the incense's sweet drift carry you forward to another moment in Joan's eternal legacy. You linger in St. Peter's Basilica, the golden light softening as the ceremony nears its end, the marble underfoot now warm from the press of pilgrims' steps. The air is thick with incense, its sweetness blending with the faint polish of stone and the subtle musk of wool from the crowd's cloaks. Your own cloak catches the breeze from an open door, its hem brushing the floor, and you feel the weight of this moment, a crowning not of kings, but of a girl who became a saint. The portrait of Joan gazes down her painted armor, a quiet echo of the battles she fought, her banner a flame that never faltered. The Pope's voice fades, replaced by a choir's hymn, its notes soaring like wings through the vastness, and you sense Joan's spirit woven into the music, the light, the faith of those around you. A Frenchwoman, her hands clasped, whispers to her daughter, "We prayed to her in the war, and she heard us." The girl, no older than Joan, nods solemnly, clutching a small wooden cross, its edges smoothed by touch. It's not Joan's cross, but it recalls the twig cross she held in Rouen, a call back to the courtroom in Paris, to the meadow where she knelt in Domremy. It's a thread tying this sacred rite to the girl whose voice still echoes from battlefields to basilicas. You smile faintly, imagine Joan's saints gathered like proud parents nudging each other and saying, "Our girl made it." A pilgrim nearby, his face scarred from some distant fight, mutters, "She'd laugh at all this fuss." You chuckle, perhaps she'd tell her saints to trade the incense for a good horse and a clear road. The historical debate about Joan's canonization in 1920 is a tapestry of faith and politics. The Church's records detail her path to sainthood from her 1456 rehabilitation to her 1909 beatification, driven by centuries of devotion and reported miracles. But why did it culminate in 1920? Some historians argue it was France's post. World War I, hunger for unity with Joan's image, a warrior and mystic bridging secular and sacred divides. Others see the Church seizing a moment to affirm its influence, her sainthood, a response to modern skepticism. The miracles attributed to her, like healings in rural France, are debated. Were they divine or shaped to fit canonization's rigorous process? The truth, like the candlelight now flickering on the altar, casts both clarity and shadow. You move closer to the altar, the marble cool under your hand, and catch a whiff of lavender again, stronger now perhaps from a wreath laid by a pilgrim. It pulls you back to Joan's world, to the scent that clung to her armor in Tours, to the meadow where she prayed. The choir's hymn swells its notes, vibrating through the stone, and you feel the crowd's shared reverence, a pulse that binds them to Joan's legacy. A young Italian woman, her shawl embroidered with lilies, whispers to her brother, "She's for all of us now, not just France." You nod, sensing Joan's light stretching beyond borders, her story a beacon for dreamers and fighters alike. The historical record notes her universal appeal, her name invoked by soldiers in trenches, by poets in quiet rooms. But why such enduring power? Some argue her faith, pure and fierce, speaks to human longing. Others see her as a symbol endlessly reshaped by each era's needs. A sudden clatter, a candle falling from its holder, its wax splashing on the marble, breaks the hymn's spell. A novice scrambles to retrieve it, his face flushed, and the crowd laughs softly, a moment of warmth in the basilica's grandeur. You grin, imagine a saint tipping the candle, reminding everyone Joan loved a good jest. The ceremony ends, the crowd dispersing, and you step outside, the Roman air sharp with the scent of rain and stone. A bell tolls deep and resonant, not the off-key chime of Domremi's monk, but a reminder of it tying you to Joan's world. You think of that clumsy monk, his bell a constant thread, and smile faintly. You pause in the square, St. Peter's dome looming above, and watch a sparrow dart across the sky, its wings a flicker against the clouds. You chuckle, maybe it's her saint scout carrying her haloed light to every corner of the earth. The basilica fades its hymns and incense, blending into a dreamlike hum, and you feel Joan's presence not in the fire or the courtroom, but in the crosses, the songs, the hearts that carry her still. That off-key bell that monk's clumsy tolling hums, faintly pulling you back to her path. Let the sunlight's eternal glow carry you forward to the boundless echo of Joan's fierce, fleeting journey, now a saint's unending flame.